Chapter 1760. In the original work, Dustless felt that Lancer wasn't smart enough. As a heroic spirit, he was fooled by the cynical Yen Feng Qili. It was truly embarrassing. You better give me a reasonable explanation or else. Lancer's eyes narrowed into a line, emitting a very dangerous glow. Or else what? Kill me? This kind of thing can only be realized in dreams. It's too difficult for you to kill me in broad daylight. Dustless really couldn't be bothered to attack Lancer, but this fellow insisted on courting death. He didn't understand where he got the right to be arrogant. Although the hero King Gilgamesh liked to court death, it was undeniable that not only was he smart, but he was also powerful. He was also the most ancient king, and his data in all aspects could be said to be perfect. But what was this Lancer in front of him? Although his background wasn't bad, he was just a small character. He was weak and his tone was extremely arrogant. He was also very stupid, and he still hadn't realized that Yen Feng Qili was lying to him. What mission did Yen Feng Qili give you? Dustless asked curiously. Capture Ilya? That's right. Pointing at Ilya, who was curled up behind Dustless, a murderous intent and doubt flashed across Lancer's face. I really don't understand why that fellow needs a little brat, especially for this little brat. He actually dared to ask me to attack the lady's room. Damn it, Yen Feng Qili better never use up the command curse, or I'll definitely kill him immediately. Lancer cursed, hating Yen Feng Qili to death. He was probably the first heroic spirit in human history to be ordered by Master to attack the lady's room. It's not wrong to say that you are stupid. Lancer, do you still not understand why Yen Feng Qili is targeting Ilya? Dustless asked calmly. If I knew the secret, I wouldn't be here listening to your nonsense. Perhaps you would have already reincarnated by now. Lancer mocked Dustless coldly. This brat. I'll see if you can continue to be arrogant later. Dustless sneered in his heart before clearing his throat. Ilya is the carrier of the Holy Grail. The tool. The carrier of the Holy Grail. Lancer was stunned. He had a blank expression on his face. He did not know what Dustless was talking about. I believe you also know the method to revive the Holy Grail, right? Dustless asked calmly. Nonsense, do you think I'm an idiot? I definitely understand such basic things. With a glare, Lancer shouted loudly. Dustless's tone was full of different meanings, as if he was treating himself as a fool. You are an idiot. Dustless didn't care about Lancer's twitching face at all. He mocked. Once you successfully snatch Ilya away, the Holy Grail summoning ritual will be completed. Nonsense. Lancer shook his head violently and doubted Dustless with a firm voice. Only the final victor can obtain the Holy Grail. This battle hasn't ended yet. Including me, Saster, who has yet to be eliminated, and your saber, there are 3 heroic spirits in total. The victor hasn't been decided yet. Lancer said bluntly, are you trying to tell me that the Holy Grail can be summoned when there are only 3 heroic spirits left? Forgive me for being blunt, but this kind of boring joke has no highlights at all. When did I say that the Holy Grail can be summoned when there are only 3 heroic spirits left? Lancer, it's really a waste of energy to talk to a simple-minded but well-developed person like you. Dustless didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. The conditions to activate the Holy Grail are extremely harsh. It requires the sacrifice of 7 heroic spirits' souls. Do you understand what this means? 7 souls? That's not right. Lancer was stunned when he heard that. He asked in confusion, there are only 6 heroic spirits in this Holy Grail war. Where are we going to get 7 souls? Your reaction is really slow. If you include yourself, isn't that 7 souls? Dustless sneered loudly. No matter what, you're going to die for sure. In other words, even if I help Yen Feng Qili obtain victory, that fellow will still kill me in the end. Lancer's expression gradually turned ugly with an indignant expression. Oh well, don't be so agitated. The 7 souls that I told you just now is the maximum that can be used to revive the Holy Grail. Actually, you can cut corners a little. 7 souls can be reduced to 5. In the original work, when Gold Sparkle and Saber were still alive, Yen Feng Qili had already summoned the Holy Grail. 5 souls can also revive the Holy Grail? Lancer raised his voice with great surprise. He didn't expect the Holy Grail to have so many unknown secrets. Actually, I saved your life just now. You should thank me, Lancer, Dustless suddenly said out of the blue. Thank you. Lancer's face immediately darkened. He said coldly, Thank you for destroying my plan. I can't wait to drill a hole in your head to vent my anger. A vulgar person who doesn't know etiquette. Dustless sighed deeply and explained quietly, although you look like a human, your thoughts are like a pig's. 4 heroic spirits have already died. If you capture Ilya and bring her back to Yen Fengili, he can make the Holy Grail appear. You're really funny. Just now you said that only 5 souls can revive the Holy Grail. Now it's become the souls of 4 heroic spirits? Your words don't add up. Lancer laughed loudly. Just when he was about to ruthlessly humiliate Dustless, he suddenly thought of something and shuddered. Blockhead, you're finally enlightened. After you bring Ilya back, Yen Fengili will use the command curse to make you commit suicide. Together with the souls of the 4 heroic spirits from before, we have exactly 5 souls. Chapter 1761. Lancer's face was livid. He wanted to deny Dustless's point of view and thought that it was just a ridiculous strategy to sow discord. However, after thinking about Dustless's character, Lancer felt that it was not an exaggeration. Yen Fengili's master was untrustworthy. Lancer understood this without needing Dustless to sow discord. You don't have to worry. Since I'm going to die here soon, I'm telling you the truth so that you can die without regrets. Light flashed in his right hand and a golden sword appeared. The ability to control light? Lancer raised his eyebrows slightly and then relaxed. He also held his noble artifact to guard against Dustless. I think I can understand it this way. As long as I die here, you can use that little girl to awaken the Holy Grail. Don't think of me as despicable as Yen Fengili. Dustless shook his finger and pointed at Ilya. Ilya is a tool for the Holy Grail, but I don't plan to sacrifice her. The Irinsbaron family made many puppets to carry the Holy Grail. If I'm not wrong, the Irinsbaron family still has a lot in stock. I see. Lancer looked around and said, no wonder I didn't see your saber. She must have been sent by you to destroy the Einsteinsbaron family. You're right. As a reward I'll give you. Dustless's eyes turned cold. He shot out instantly. Almost in the blink of an eye, the golden blade swept out. Go to heaven. This guy's speed. Lancer's pupils suddenly froze when he saw the incoming light. He instinctively blocked the spear above his head. Boom, boom, boom. The force of the fall was too strong. The golden sword hit Lancer's weapon with full force. The ground under his feet couldn't withstand the force and collapsed. Ka. Lancer's feet sank into the ground. His arms were also bent down from the pressure. Damn it. Why is this guy so strong? Lancer cursed in his heart. His arms almost collapsed. Dustless's explosive power made Lancer feel as if he had been hit by a huge mountain. It's very difficult. Looking down at the sweaty Lancer, Dustless took the initiative to put some distance between him and Lancer. Then a large amount of golden light condensed in his right hand, and he threw it out without hesitation. Yasukani no Magatama. Swish, swish. A huge amount of light bullets flew toward them, almost occupying the entire sky. Amazing. Ilya's eyes glowed as she excitedly stared at Dustless. If it weren't for Lancer's presence, she would have pounced into Dustless's embrace and acted coquettishly. This guy. Dustless naturally noticed Ilya's blazing gaze, but he didn't feel that it was something worth rejoicing over. Ilya just wanted him to be her hired thug. No way. Damned pervert. Looking at the boundless light bullets, Lancer flew into a rage. His eyes were filled with fear. He shifted his body and decisively fled in another direction. But after a few sonic booms, Lancer quickly realized that he was gravely mistaken. Swish. 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 A huge amount of light bullets sealed the entire space. Escaping had completely lost its meaning. No matter where he hid, he couldn't escape the attack of the light bullets. There were too many of them. I'll fight it out with you. Realizing that he couldn't escape, Lancer clenched his teeth and decisively brandished his crimson spear. Clang, 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 clang. Lancer's strength might not be as terrifying as Dustless's, but his attainments in wielding the spear were extraordinary. Some of the light bullets were shattered by the tip of his spear. But even so, it was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. It was impossible to completely resolve the problem at hand. Puchi, puchi, puchi. After persisting for a few seconds, Lancer's body was penetrated by the light beam, leaving scorched holes all over his strong body. Puff, After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Lancer, who was physically exhausted, fell to the ground. His face showed an unprecedented look of exhaustion. Ayaya, is it over just like that? How long has it been? It seems that you didn't even persist for one move. I was expecting you to persist for a while. It's really disappointing. Lancer, I still have a lot of good things to show you. Dustless sighed and walked over. Looking at Lancer, who was covered with bruises on the ground, he sighed and said, "You came here with great interest, but your heart is waning. Your performance is really disappointing. Your vicious mouth can't even let go of a person who is about to disappear?" Lancer said weakly. Looking up at Dustless, his heart thumped. He didn't know when Dustless had changed his eyes. The scarlet eternal Mangekyo Sharingan exuded a demonic brilliance. Being glanced at by those evil eyes, Lancer felt a chill in his heart. "You don't have to show such a nervous look. You are not qualified for me to use dojutsu," Dustless said mercilessly while staring at the wounds all over Lancer's body. He couldn't help but frown. Although there were dozens of gaps and Lancer's whole body was in a terrible state, but through the unique vision of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Dustless found that these wounds were not so fatal. Chapter 1762. Although many parts of Lancer's body were pierced through, as a hero spirit, he shouldn't be in such a sorry state. There are many wounds, but none of them are fatal. Dustless focused on Lancer, who was lying on the ground. He was troubled. Normally, as long as the wounds were not fatal, a hero spirit could continue to fight until they died. In the original book, when Saber and Gilgamesh fought in the final battle, Saber's injuries were far more serious than Lancer's. However, she was still as powerful as ever. Perhaps Lancer was not as good as Saber, but Lancer's performance was too weak. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At that moment there was a sudden swoosh, swoosh, swoosh sound in front of him. It was very cold and frightening, like the hiss of a snake. Sounded very depressing and scary. When he raised his head to look, what entered his eyes was a deadly sharpness. Poochie! Wuxian suddenly felt a pain in his chest. He subconsciously looked over. It was a blood-red spear that had pierced through his body. Moreover, it had destroyed his heart in an extremely powerful manner. His blood continued to flow like a stream. Ah! Mad laughter spread. Lancer, who looked ferocious, stood up stubbornly again. "It's just as I guessed. You pretended to be dead so that I could get close to you." Dustless's tone was calm and he did not even blink. Anyone would let down their guard when facing someone who was about to die. Thick. Is his body made of iron? His heart was destroyed, but he can still move around safely? Lancer's arrogant laughter stopped abruptly. He stared at Dustless cautiously and thought to himself, "I destroyed his heart, but why doesn't this guy look worried at all? Could it be that he has a relic that can restrain me? Or does he have the ability to heal himself?" Impossible. Lancer shook his head stubbornly. He was stabbed by his relic and it was an important organ like his heart. There was no other choice but to die. "You're a little different from the rumors. I remember in Northern Ireland's mythology, you're very brave and brave. Now you're playing dead to plot against others?" Dustless sneered with the corner of his mouth slightly raised. "When dealing with despicable people, you don't have to rely solely on your means." Lancer replied disapprovingly. Being open and aboveboard also depended on the opponent. If the enemy was a despicable person, wouldn't it be idiotic to use the same open and aboveboard methods as before? As time went by, Lancer soon realized that something was wrong. Dustless was as immovable as a rock. His body was as straight as a javelin, and he was not affected by the amount of HP he had left. You don't have to force yourself. No matter who you are, be it a heroic spirit or a human, once your heart is pierced, you will definitely die. Lancer snorted coldly and looked over. He was sure that Dustless's heart had been destroyed. "Really? I may be that special case." Dustless, who was standing calmly, suddenly had a strange red light flash across his cheeks. Then he exerted a little force, and the bloody wound on his chest was almost instantly healed under Lancer's shocked gaze. It was as fast as the blink of an eye. "Your plan is just to humiliate yourself, Lancer. Actually, I've already noticed your problem, so I purposely exposed a flaw for you to attack. Actually, I wanted to see what kind of tricks you would use to attack me. I was looking forward to it, but your performance, it's as boring as the battle just now." There was a dazzling light in the air and countless heavenly weapons swarmed out. "Tear him apart." With a wave of his hand, The thousands of weapons that Dustless controlled shot out at the same time towards Lancer's head and abdomen. Poochie. 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 There was a large amount of blood on the ground and it kept dripping from Lancer's body. There were more than 10 deadly weapons in his abdomen, and each of them was extremely dangerous and sharp. They had completely destroyed Lancer's life force. Dustless even used Lancer's noble phantasm to crush his heart. Inside the Gate of Babylon, there were prototypes of great hero noble phantasms, such as Saber's Sword of the King, the Excalibur. Lancer's noble phantasm also had prototypes in the Gate of Babylon. I'll give you a taste of your own medicine. You pierced my heart, so I'll use your weapon to pierce your heart. Everyone should return the favor to show respect. Can you still continue to pretend to be dead? Lancer. Lord Wuxian came down and teased, if you had been lying on your stomach just now, you might still be able to survive. I don't understand why you suddenly stood up and attacked me and even let out a burst of silly laughter. Has your head been squashed by the door? Woo. Lancer opened his mouth to refute, but the voice that came out of his throat was not pleasant. His throat had been torn apart by a weapon like the Gate of Babylon, so he could not continue to speak like a normal person. I'll send you to a pleasant death. With a gentle flick of his finger, a weak but destructive light landed on Lancer's body. Void flash. Boom boom boom. At the end of the explosion, after a dazzling light, Lancer was annihilated, and there was only a scorched pit left on the ground. Damn it, you're as unpredictable as before. We need to plan further, Gilgamesh. Chapter 1763. In the distance, a middle-aged man dressed as a priest and a handsome man with blonde hair had been hiding in the dark, silently watching this hard-won battle. After seeing Lancer killed, the priest was the most agitated, his eyes filled with hatred. The two of them hid under the shade of a tree, discussing in a low voice from time to time. They had been paying attention to the death battle between Dustless and Lancer. Until the end of the battle, their eyes never left. Damn it. The priest hit the tree trunk hard, venting his anger and dissatisfaction. 10 years is like a day, Gilgamesh. In the past we were bullied by Dustless like this. Today, 10 years later, the outcome is exactly the same. Watch your tone, you bastard. You're the only one who was bullied. The arrogant blonde young man glanced at Yen Fengili, his hands in his pockets, his eyes as cold as knives. This duo was Gilgamesh and Yen Fengili. Time passed quickly and 10 years had passed. Gilgamesh was a heroic spirit, but after 10 years, Yen Fengili's age and body structure had gradually withered. Gilgamesh, does your ridiculous self-esteem still exist? So funny. 10 years ago, the insufferably arrogant hero king became a foil. The protagonist of the Holy Grail War was Dustless. And everyone only knew that the hero king was just a loser who dragged out an ignoble existence. Yen Fengili was not afraid of Gilgamesh at all, and his words were full of sarcasm. The situation between Yen Fengili and Gilgamesh was like two crows standing on a pile of coal. No one would complain about the other. If Gilgamesh could win, Yen Fengili wouldn't mind being his subordinate. The key was that Gilgamesh didn't have the ability to defeat Dustless. No matter if he was a king or a god, he was just a loser at best. Who would respect a loser? Bastard. Gilgamesh coldly glanced at Yen Fengili and didn't want to argue with him. There was nothing he could do about it. After all, it was a fact. Even if he used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to stop Dustless. This guy is simply cheating. How preposterous. During the Fourth Holy Grail War, this guy was a heroic spirit. Now he has suddenly become a master. Who gave Dustless the authority to do this? Yen Feng and Chili roared with flushed faces. Now the right to supervise the Holy Grail War no longer belonged to the church, and no one would listen to their arrangements. They had been completely overridden. What right do you have to talk about others? Even if Dustless cheated, a bastard like you also cheated. Gilgamesh mocked coldly as he looked at Yen Fengili, whose face was filled with unwillingness. Yen Fengili had two servants. This was also cheating, and the situation was far worse than Dustless's. As the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, this is my right. Yen Fengili's face turned red as he argued loudly, what's the point of us mocking each other here? Gilgamesh. Instead of spitting at each other out of boredom, why don't we think of some practical solutions? Otherwise, the final winner of this Holy Grail War will be Dustless again, Yen Fengili said anxiously. Yen Fengili said anxiously. After Gilgamesh's teaching, he had already turned evil. He desperately needed the Holy Grail to answer his many questions and the meaning of life. I don't have any solutions either. Gilgamesh's eyes that were like blood gems suddenly dimmed. After 10 years, even though he wasn't convinced, Gilgamesh had to admit that there was a huge gap between him and Dustless. Both of them were existences in completely different fields. Especially when he saw how Dustless played around with Lancer just now, Gilgamesh's thoughts became even more certain. Hero King, are you planning to give up? Such actions are a disgrace to the name of the oldest king. Gilgamesh, you have fallen. Yanfeng Qili roared bitterly. He was still hoping that Gilgamesh could defeat Dustless, but this guy had already given up on himself. Bastard, do you have a way to defeat him? 10 years ago, if it wasn't for me, you would have turned into a skeleton by now. Otherwise, do you think you can stand under the sun and breathe freely? The funniest thing is that you still want to take revenge on Dustless? Bastard, if you haven't woken up yet, go home and sleep again. Gilgamesh turned around and attacked Yanfeng Qili without holding back. 10 years ago, Dustless shattered the Holy Grail in one fell swoop, causing the evil of this world to flow out. The severely injured Hero King was naturally corroded as well. If it was any other heroic spirit, they would have been devoured by the evil of this world. However, the unparalleled Hero King was not corroded by the evil of this world. Instead, he broke out of his cocoon and was reborn. And Yanfeng Qili, who had signed a contract with the Hero King, was saved as a result. No, you are mistaken. I know that Dustless is invincible, and I do not plan on hoping that you can finish off Dustless. Yanfeng Qili's eyes shimmered as he revealed his plan. He sneered and said, Dustless and Weigong Kissy are different. The former may have a cold personality, but he will definitely not allow the people he values to be harmed. Weigong Kissy is truly a despicable person. Qili, are you planning on attacking those women? Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed into slits. Yanfeng Qili was trying to pull chestnuts out of the fire. That's right. Yanfeng and Qili nodded. Although it was a little despicable, it didn't matter. This kind of extreme method would definitely be useless if it was used on Weigong Qisi. However, during the battle with Lancer, Yanfeng and Qili saw that Dustless was angered. Could be seen that he saw the girls as his reverse scale. Gilgamesh, other than smashing a broken pot, what other methods do we have to deal with Dustless? I am also helpless in this predicament. All I can do is burn the boats. Yanfeng Qili answered disapprovingly. In his eyes, despicable and dirty methods were not important. The victor decided everything. All he needed to do was to capture Alice, Phil and company and ask Dustless to commit suicide. Chapter 1764. Yanfeng Qili's hatred for Dustless was as high as the sky, and he was filled with resentment and hostility. If he could, he wished that Gilgamesh and Dustless could die together immediately. However, one thing was undeniable. Yanfeng Qili admired and hated Dustless as an enemy. Sarvant, who could destroy everyone by himself, was so powerful. At the same time, it was precisely because of this absolute power that Yanfeng Qili was afraid of Dustless. For decades he even dared to show his head easily, afraid that Dustless would take revenge on him. Despicable guy, he likes to do such thankless things. Yanfeng Qili was also dissatisfied with Dustless in other aspects. This guy seemed to be deliberately sent by God to oppose him. No matter when, he stood on the opposite side of him. You're just a heroic spirit, a tool used by other masters to satisfy their own wishes. Why do you have to do such a disgusting thing? Supervising the Holy Grail War was originally the Church's full strength, but now, Dustless took it away. Participating in the Holy Grail War was originally something that only a master could do. Well, Dustless took Saber away and became the most bizarre and powerful master by replenishing her mana. The so-called Holy Grail War's original purpose was to collect all the souls of the heroic spirits. Souls were the raw material to promote the resurrection of the Holy Grail, but now, Dustless ruined it. The Fifth Holy Grail War was completely instigated by Dustless alone. Qili, have you been driven to desperation? The Hero King said with a mocking expression, you used such a despicable method to force Dustless to compromise. Aren't you a member of the church? Your mind is obviously dirtier than those criminals in prison. So what? Yanfeng Qili shouted indifferently, the winner takes all. Who cares if the process is despicable or glorious? Everyone only cares about the winner. And Gilgamesh, even if my mind is dirty, you're not much better. As they spoke, Yen Fengili and the Hero King began a new round of catfighting. Creak, damn it. Thinking of what Dustless had done, Yen Fengili was so angry that he ground his teeth. If it weren't for Dustless, the super cheating device that violated the rules of the game, nothing would have changed. Idiot, did you learn your lesson this time? On the other side, Dustless looked down at Ilya. The young lady was drenched in sweat, her palms were sweaty, and her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She was almost limp in Dustless's arms. I'm not afraid. Ilya pouted and retorted. She even bit Dustless in dissatisfaction. Shit hurts. Are you a dog? Dustless hurriedly pulled his hand out of Ilya's mouth. Looking at the scarlet teeth mark on his thumb, he scolded with a stern face. If you're still so unruly in the future, you definitely won't be able to find a boyfriend. Nosy fellow, that's my private matter. It's not up to you to interfere. Ilya raised her head proudly, looking very displeased. You're saying that I'm nosy? If it were anyone else, Dustless definitely wouldn't say anything. However, Phil was already his, and to Dustless he was equivalent to Ilya's father. Watch your tone, Ilya. If you dare to spout nonsense again, I'll spank your butt. Dustless glared at Ilya with a warning look and even made a slapping gesture. I'm not afraid of you. Ilya didn't fall for it. Instead, she skipped toward Phil. Her bright eyes occasionally flashed a faint smile that was contrary to her tender age. She gave off the feeling of an old fox playing tricks. This mischievous little girl is really a headache. Dustless let out a long sigh. He didn't need to think to know that Ilya was most likely speaking ill of him to Phil. Dustless could roughly guess the content. It was likely that he wasn't allowed to share a bed with Phil. However, Ilya didn't have the final say on this point. It was human nature to eat and lust. This was an unchanging rule since ancient times. It's getting dark. Let's call it a day. Everyone go back. After a busy day, fatigue swept through every part of his body. Dustless also felt sleepy. A feeling of drowsiness spread throughout his body. In particular, the mental fatigue was far greater than the physical fatigue. A group of women surrounded him and buzzed. Sometimes he would be distracted and not understand what they were saying. He would also throw a tantrum for no reason. At the same time, a big problem occurred in another direction. Damn, is this guy Satyr? On the way back from the Ahrensburg family, Rin Dosaka and Saber unfortunately encountered uninvited guests. A man and woman duo blocked the way of the two women. Saber, can you give me the thing in your hand? A sweet-sounding fairy-like voice came through and Saber stared at her intently. This person was wearing a black robe. Her specific appearance and age couldn't be distinguished. Only her voice was quite pleasant. If beauty could be judged by a person's voice, then this mysterious woman could definitely get full marks. Her appearance and temperament were not worse than Saber. Are you Castor? A touch of vigilance flashed in her eyes. Saber raised the Excalibur high. First of all, she was sure that this guy was definitely a heroic spirit. Judging from the magic fluctuations, he was definitely not Lancer. Then there was only one satyr left. Chapter 1765. According to Dustless's instructions, Ling and Saber had brought back the brand new Holy Grail instrument. Unfortunately, they happened to meet Castor and his master, Gumu Soichiro. Gumu-sensei? I didn't expect him to be Satyr's master. Ling's eyes were full of surprise. She stared at the expressionless Gumu Soichiro and asked, Is Gumu also a sorcerer? I haven't heard of him before. But Gumu Soichiro remained indifferent, as if he didn't hear anything, and turned a deaf ear. This guy seems to be wrong. Saber also circled around Gumu Soichiro. As a servant, she could see more clearly than Rin and Osaka. Gumu Soichiro's eyes were still, without any human emotions. They were as cold as a steel puppet. Of course something is wrong. He's already under my control. Satyr smiled. Even with the black robe covering her face, her soul-stirring elegant smile made people lose their minds. You, Rin Enbin slightly frowned and reprimanded, involving innocent people in this war, you have violated the essence of participating in the Holy Grail War, Satyr. The rules are only for the weak. Castor calmly retorted, Isn't Saber's master a person who often tramples on the rules? This guy is quite eloquent. Rin Enbin and Saber looked at each other, they were both speechless. Dustless had repeatedly ignored the rules of the Holy Grail and participated in the Holy Grail War as a servant. This kind of thing had never happened before. It was completely against the rules. Wuxian often committed such violations and even disregard of the rules. Are you speechless? Seeing Saber and Rin Enbin were silent and staring at her, Sader took the opportunity to explain, it is because that guy is strong, he can trample on all the rules again and again, he can do whatever he wants. But you are not Dustless. You are far inferior to him. Rin Enbin deliberately reminded Castor that when Berserker was killed by Dustless, he said that Dustless's strength was comparable to Zeus. In some countries, ordinary humans with high status had a lot of privileges. Naturally, experts like Dustless could ignore some rules as well. Rules were dead but people were alive. When a person reached a certain height, they would begin to trample on the so-called rules. Being inferior to him is only temporary. Castor snorted and immediately took out a strange weapon and stared at Saber. You will be my slave from now on. Swish. Swish. Seeing that Castor took out a mysterious weapon, Saber flashed in front of Ling and held her sword with both hands. Ling, be careful. That glowing purple weapon may be Castor's noble phantasm. Final struggle. Castor snorted and looked at Kugi Soichiro coldly. You go and temporarily restrain Saber, I will catch the little girl and threaten Saber. Saber is a person who values the spirit of chivalry. If the person she is guarding is caught, she will take the initiative to be tortured. Castor was full of confidence and looked at Ling. Swish. Kugi Soichiro, who was controlled by Castor, nodded mechanically, then he turned into a gust of wind and instantly approached Saber. How can this guy be so fast? Seeing the fleeting shadow, Saber's pupils shrank. Even she could only see a vague shadow, it was difficult for her to detect it. Ha! Kugi Soichiro clenched his fist tightly and looked at the loophole in Saber's body and punched her. Boom! At the critical moment, Saber hurriedly used Excalibur to block in front of her. Even so, she was still knocked back and almost fell to the ground. How is it possible? How can this guy be so strong? How can he defeat a Valkyrie? Ling was stunned. Kugi Soichiro's performance was beyond her understanding. Maybe Castor used magic to strengthen his body. Saber said with a dignified expression, and at the same time her eyes changed. She no longer looked at Kugi Soichiro as a human but as a Valkyrie. Oh, Saber, I can see that you have a close relationship with Dustless, and the way you signed the contract is a bit different. Castor smiled and said, you must have signed the contract with your first knight, right? This guy. Saber's face instantly turned red. She didn't understand why Castor said such a thing in public. She really didn't understand whether Castor was too noble or she cared too much about the past. What? That bastard signed the contract with Saber in this way. The furious voice instantly resounded through the sky. The vast dark night instantly turned into a golden ocean. A certain furious golden twinkle was completely enraged. Like a volcano that had been ignited, its entire body was filled with raging killing intent. The person he liked actually went to the bed of his enemy. The golden flash vomited blood. Chapter 1766. Abominable, 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 abominable. That guy actually defiled this king's possession. He deserves to die. He must be cut into pieces. Gilgamesh suddenly flashed and his hair stood up. Unknowingly, Dustless, that bastard, actually made a cuckold out of his wife. You must punish him. Gilgamesh's face was extremely distorted. When he thought of how Saber ignored him and signed a contract with Dustless on her first night as a newlywed, Gilgamesh felt a burst of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Who? Gilgamesh's face was red, the veins on his face were bulging, and his breathing speed was dozens of times faster than usual. His whole person was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He was extremely dangerous. Who are you? Archer. Saber and Castor exclaimed at the same time. Saber was okay, after all, she had experienced the strength of the Hero King, but Castor was obviously panicking. His eyes were full of fear and panic. The sky full of noble phantoms was too deadly. What kind of monster is this guy? How can he use so many noble phantoms at once? Castor was frightened and his delicate body was trembling. The sky full of noble phantoms was too oppressive. Most of the other heroes only had one noble phantoms, but Gilgamesh had thousands of them. Who wouldn't be surprised? Buzz. Facing the golden light in the sky, everyone felt as if their bones were stuck in their throat and they couldn't breathe smoothly. The life that was usually in their hands fell on the head of the Hero King at the moment. It seemed that this guy could kill everyone in an instant with just a thought. Who is this guy? How can he mobilize so many noble phantoms? Ling was also shocked. Looking at the golden glitter, he subconsciously took 2 steps back. This guy is Sarvant, who served as the archer in the last Holy Grail War. His body is the hero king of ancient Uruk, the king of all the heroes. Saber explained softly. Because he is the most ancient king, the hero king belongs to the origin of right and wrong, and has the prototype of all the hero phantoms. He also has the prototype of my Excalibur. However, Saber's tone was full of disdain. But this guy's ability is also to steal from Dustless. The so-called ancient king is at best a thief. Saber, pay attention to your words for this king. It was that guy who stole my ability. After the corner of his mouth twitched, the hero king's expression turned even more gloomy. He was so angry that he was jumping around. Was there a need to be such a scam? Dustless was the one who stole my ability. Why is everyone saying that I stole his? Preposterous. What a glib tongue, but it's a fact that Dustless is more familiar with this ability than you. Thieves like you are scum. Since Dustless didn't manage to kill you last time, I'll take care of you this time. You bastard. Gilgamesh's eyes were filled with anger. He was really angered by Saber's words because Saber poked at Gilgamesh's sore spot. Even though he was the original owner of the Gate of Babylon, Gilgamesh's proficiency was far from Dustless's level. Therefore, Gilgamesh had always been regarded as a fake, and it was he who stole Dustless's ability. Whoosh. At the same time, Gumu Soichiro also launched another attack. His body turned into a black wind and rushed towards Spare. Bastard, who allowed you to mess around in front of the king? You are despising the king's authority. Go to hell. Gilgamesh waved his hand and thousands of light fell at the same time. Puchi. 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 Gumu Soichiro's abdomen was suddenly severely injured, and there were more than a dozen divine weapons in his abdomen, ending his life. Damn it, Castor cursed and looked at Gilgamesh with cold eyes. You're that guy's Sarvatan, right? Then you'll die too. The light in the void changed its direction and all of them were aimed at Castor. Gilgamesh's cold eyes were indifferent, and he looked at Castor as if he was looking at a dead man. Whoosh. After a while, thousands of golden light poured down, and it seemed that Castor's life was about to end. Buzz. There was a ripple of power in the void and it was at that moment a sudden change occurred. Dao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Whoosh. The light in the sky suddenly attacked from the side. There were so many of them, and they were so powerful that they were not inferior to the relic that Gilgamesh shot from the Gate of Babylon. Boom. There were a lot of sparks in the sky and a lot of light collided with the divine weapons, resulting in a violent explosion. The dense high-density explosion filled the entire sky. Are you finally willing to come out? You're really in the limelight. Gilgamesh stared at Dustless, who was floating in the sky, and suddenly groaned with great dissatisfaction. In his opinion, the sky has always been his territory and people like Dustless only need to kneel on the ground and worship him. Castor is not pleasing to the eye, but you are even more disgusting. In the darkness, a figure walked out with a smile. He sized up the enraged hero king with a mocking expression. He felt like he had been shot while lying down. First of all, you look so stupid and you look like a rich man. If I were Saber, I wouldn't like you. Staring at the hero king, Dustless didn't care about adding fuel to the fire. Chapter 1767. The hero king was furious when he heard that. He clenched his fists and the sweat on his palms kept dripping. You are the first person who dares to say that I'm a retard, and that I'm a country bumpkin. Gilgamesh said in a low voice, trying to suppress the anger in his heart. Because of his excessive anger, his whole body was trembling with anger. This is the truth. Don't you think you are very conspicuous when you come out wearing gold? Dustless asked strangely. That is the taste of a king. As a king, no matter where you go, you must be the center of attention. Without thinking, Gilgamesh replied without thinking, this is the taste of a king ordinary people don't understand. I really don't understand the mentality of a tycoon. Dustless nodded and admitted, but he couldn't understand how wearing a gold armor to parade around the city had the majesty of a king. It gave people the feeling that he was a nouveau riche. The last Holy Grail War didn't kill you, but you got a body because of the evil of this world. So that you can see the light of day again. Boy, you are lucky, but this Holy Grail war is going to be unlucky. If you live incognito, maybe you can escape the disaster. Tsk, you took the initiative to come out and die, sad and lamentable, and, narrowing his eyes, Dustless said sarcastically, the one and only hero king in the world actually sneak attacked others, and even planned to capture Saber to threaten me. Your actions make the name of the ancient king cry. Of course I won't do such a despicable thing. It's just that Yanfeng Chili used command spell to order me to do so. Gilgamesh said with extreme disgust. These words were not false. As the ancient king, his dignity did not allow him to do such a despicable thing. When he heard that Yanfeng Chili wanted him to capture Saber alive to threaten Dustless, Gilgamesh decisively refused. He would not lower himself to do such a thing even if he died in battle. But as the saying goes, an arm can't win against a leg. Yanfeng Chili directly used command spell. Even if Gilgamesh was full of complaints and disgust, he had to carry out the order. You also have the same plan, right? Castor. Staring at Castor, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head and thought, these guys know that their strength is not a threat to me, so they want to capture Alice and Phil to threaten me? His methods are truly vile. But what a pity. Dustless smiled complacently and said to himself lazily, to be on the safe side, I have left Flying Thunder God warlocks on all of them. Even if there is danger, I can come to support them at the first moment. You want to fight me with your ridiculous strategy? You are too inexperienced. An idiot who overestimates himself. No wonder you suddenly appeared like a ghost. Damn it, you even have this kind of spatial ability? How are the other heroic spirits going to fight him then? Castor's face was extremely angry and he stamped his feet in embarrassment. Although he didn't know what Flying Thunder God Warlock was, he could hear from Dustless's mouth that it was an object similar to a spatial coordinate. No wonder some masters and heroic spirits once privately called Dustless as a cheating maniac. There are so many strange abilities, this should be your other abilities, I don't remember. The king's treasure, having such an extraordinary spatial ability. Compared to the shocked Castor, Gilgamesh was much calmer. He had already accepted Dustless's strength. Not to mention when it came to cheating, no one was more shameless than Yanfeng Chili. Dustless's abilities belonged to him and he could use them legally. On the contrary, Yanfeng Chili actually had two Sarvtants, one Lancer and one Gilgamesh. In addition, he also had almost inexhaustible command spell. These two perverts. Castor's eyes circled around Wuxian and Gilgamesh and he became timid. Whether it was Wuxian or Gilgamesh, any one of them could easily defeat him, there was no comparison at all. After thinking for a while, Castor decided to retreat. But there was a strange light in the depths of his eyes. Castor looked at Dustless and Gilgamesh with hatred. His series of plans were ruined by these two bastards. Get that girl, she is the weakest and we will have one more trump card in the future game. Looking at Rin Enbin, Castor's eyes were full of desire. What's with that look? Castor, you don't seem to have figured out who saved you. If it wasn't for me, you and that idiot Gumu Soichiro would have been killed by this golden flash. Dustless pointed at Gilgamesh and said arrogantly in a tone that said, you should kneel down and thank me. Don't talk nonsense if you are uneducated. Gilgamesh carefully tried to figure out the meaning of Dustless' words. When he heard this golden flash, he immediately shouted loudly at Dustless for being uneducated. He was not a dog, why did he use the word golden flash? You want me to thank you? Then how can I thank you? I don't think I have anything worthy of your attention. If I really have something, it's nothing more than this body. Castor's cheeks were full of love and his eyes were as soft as water. Is this guy going to seduce me? Dustless's eyebrows slightly jumped. He was not controlled by Castor's charm. He coldly warned, put away your ridiculous thoughts. If you dare to touch Rin, I will cut off your hands. Chapter 1768. Hearing Dustless's threatening tone, Castor retracted his outstretched hands and stared at Dustless unwillingly. Damn man. Castor's cheeks bulged and he stomped his feet. Haha. Seeing this scene, Rin Enbin couldn't help but laugh. He was afraid that only Dustless had such a deterrent power. Other Sarvant couldn't scare Castor. Instead of standing here, it's better to find another way to survive. Your master has disappeared. Although the mana stored in her body is large enough, it will be exhausted one day. Dustless said. As a magician, Castor's mana was definitely second to none. Even if his master died, as long as she didn't consume too much of her mana, She wouldn't disappear in 3 or 5 days. It's a small world, let's wait and see. Castor put away his unwillingness and finally withdrew his sight, turned around and retreated. What about you, Gilgamesh, are you going to fight with me now? Dustless narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile. You don't seem to have the intention to fight with me for the time being. Gilgamesh just stood quietly, there was no sign of fighting and there was no murderous aura. He didn't seem to take the initiative to fight with Dustless. Of course. Before I fight you to the death I have to get rid of someone, Gold Glitter said thoughtfully. His blood-red eyes were filled with a horrified murderous aura. Then Gilgamesh and Castor disappeared exactly the same way. Does Gilgamesh still have enemies alive? It's strange, with the Hero King's temper, it's a blessing that his enemies are still alive. Saber whispered to herself, Gilgamesh has always been the kind of person who takes revenge, it's a miracle that he let his enemies live. Saber, you're wrong, the person Gilgamesh wants to get rid of is not an enemy. Wuxian looked up at the beautiful void and made a shocking guess. If I'm not wrong, the person he wants to kill should be his master, Yanfeng Qili. Impossible. Hearing that, Saber and Rin Enbin questioned Dustless's guess at the same time. Although it sounds ridiculous, that's the truth. Gilgamesh is arrogant. Yanfengqi used the command seal to order him again and again. This guy may have been angry for a long time. If it weren't for the command seal, I'm afraid he would have already killed Yanfengqi. In the last Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh lost to Dustless, causing Yanfeng and Qili to be very dissatisfied with him. They pushed all the blame to Gilgamesh and quarreled from time to time. Gilgamesh's patience with Yanfeng and Qili had reached its limit. Anyway, even if he killed Yanfengqi, as long as he had enough mana storage, he wouldn't disappear immediately. And as for us, let's rest tonight. Tomorrow we will go to Ludong Temple to resurrect the Holy Grail. It's the most suitable place for the Holy Grail to descend. The next morning the wind was blowing and the sun was shining. Dustless and Saber rushed to Ludong Temple early. As for the others, they continued to stay in the castle. Although the Flying Thunder God Warlock was left at home, they could come back at any time. For the sake of safety, Dustless still left a few shadow clones behind. In the quiet and dense forest, the air was fresh and the atmosphere was serene. The tranquil atmosphere made people feel relaxed involuntarily. Creak. Suddenly, a sharp bird cry sounded, and then countless birds and beasts scattered in all directions, looking for the source of the sound. It turned out that there were 2 more uninvited guests. It's really a good place, there's a huge amount of mana under the veins of the earth here. It's the best place to descend the Holy Grail, and it's also Castor's nest. These 2 uninvited guests were Saber and Dustless. I hope that guy escaped in advance. Looking up at the high ancient temple, Dustless and Saber stepped on the steps, step by step. Their backs were very peaceful and Dustless's cheeks were very calm. The 2 walked side by side, no one spoke. Saber, why are you so nervous? Dustless's pace stopped, he stared at Saber, who had sweat on her forehead, and said softly, You're thinking about what kind of wish is suitable for the Holy Grail, right? It seems that you still can't let go of the destruction of Britain. Am I very stubborn? Saber bitterly nodded and admitted. Maybe, but it doesn't matter. Dustless was not surprised. It would be strange if Saber suddenly changed her life goal. Didn't I tell you before, go your own way, let others say what they want. You don't have to understand other people's feelings, including mine, just follow your inner instinct and do what you like. Dustless's lips squirmed, and when he was about to continue to speak, suddenly thousands of white light came from all directions. After condensing, it slowly compressed into a human shape, then it turned into an eyesore. Sorry, it's really rude to disturb the 2 of you. There's a very annoying guy who asked me to say that this road is blocked, so you 2 should go back the way you came. Chapter 1769. The mysterious man was handsome. He was wearing a hat, his long hair was hanging down to his waist, he was wearing wooden clogs, and he was wearing a unique costume of ancient Japan. Buzz buzz buzz. The man was holding a tachi, his 5 fingers were deformed. It was estimated that his skill was extraordinary. Even if the tachi was not out of its sheath, there was a subtle sword aura radiating out, and the skin could feel a little tingling. Who is this guy? Saber's eyes were fixed, she was full of vigilance, she was aware of the sword aura in the air, she was even more nervous. This mysterious man brought a lot of pressure to her. It's assassin, but she should be summoned by Castor. After confirming that he was not mistaken, Dustless said the mysterious man's origin. Sasaki Kojiro, a great swordsman with great strength. Who exactly are you? The elegant man's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. He was shocked. You know my origin, especially your confident look. It seems that you even know my past experience. Yes, I know. Dustless shrugged and nodded. He looked at Sasaki Kojiro and said impatiently, "Get out of my way if you know what's good for you. What if I don't let you have the meeting?" Noticing Dustless's tone was full of hostility, Sasaki Kojiro asked with a blank expression, "Why don't you use your magical power to see what my future is like?" See the future? Saber's heart skipped a beat. He lowered his head and muttered to himself, I knew Dustless could do things that no one else could. I didn't expect him to have the ability to see the future as well. Hey, do you really want to know your future? Dustless stared at Sasaki Kojiro with a smile and reminded him, maybe it's a nightmarish future. Really? Then I'm looking forward to it. Sasaki Kojiro still looked hopeful. Then I'll be merciful and tell you. Dustless's handsome face suddenly outlined a gloomy smile. He said coldly, your future is very short. If you continue to stay here and block the way, you will inevitably die in a minute. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. When Dustless's voice fell, a strange wind blew in the sky. The originally quiet forest was suddenly filled with an evil aura, and a black wind blew. Dying tragically within a minute is also worth looking forward to. Sasaki Kojiro always had a faint smile on his face. The only difference was that he also noticed the sense of danger and oppression in the atmosphere. Clang 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 clang. A slender and sharp odachi was unsheathed from its scabbard. Looks like it's going to be difficult to negotiate. Dustless focused on Sasaki Kojiro, and a sharp and shining golden sword appeared in his hand. Difficult to negotiate? Saber shook his head and looked at Dustless speechlessly. He could not help but think to himself, you're provoking him like this. It's impossible for him to resolve this battle. Dustless's words were full of sarcasm and provocation. It was impossible for Sasaki Kojiro to stop fighting. Let me see what's so special about you. With a stern look, Sasaki Kojiro held the odachi in his hand, and his body turned into a stream of light. The sharp tip of the odachi swept towards Dustless's head. You're overestimating yourself. Seeing this, Wuxia reacted immediately. His left eye turned into a purple rinnegan. He blinked gently and a powerful eye power burst out like a stormy sea. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. In the invisible world, several shadows flew out from Dustless's body. Each shadow was holding a cold dagger, and they rushed towards Sasaki Kojiro. Clang clang. Seeing that the odachi was about to cut Dustless's head, it strangely stopped. The odachi fell beside Dustless's ear and it could no longer move forward. What's going on? Sasaki Kojiro was shocked. He used all his strength to move the odachi, but he found that it was as if his odachi was embedded in a high-density rock and he could not move it at all. This is... Saber looked at the odachi next to Dustless's ear without blinking. Not only was Sasaki Kojiro confused, but she was also confused. No one cared about the odachi at all and it was even directly ignored by Dustless, but the strange thing was that Sasaki Kojiro could not move it with all his strength. Idiot! Dustless snorted. In fact, Sasaki Kojiro's odachi had been caught by his shadow. Puchi! 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 At the same time the sound of the body being cut suddenly sounded. There was a lot of blood in the air and the ground was also covered with a lot of blood stains. This. Sasaki Kojiro's mouth trembled and he looked at his body that was full of holes in disbelief. Even if he couldn't see, he could feel that he was attacked by dozens of sharp weapons at the same time. It's really embarrassing. I reminded you before but you were too careless. Dustless said with a harmless and kind expression. He chuckled and said, didn't I just say that within a minute, you will die tragically? Why didn't you pay attention at all? What a sad guy. What kind of sorcery did you use? Sasaki Kojiro stared at Dustless in disbelief. Looking at his bloody chest, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. He was sure that the culprit was Dustless, but the key was how did he do it? He didn't even notice it. Not only was Sasaki Kojiro frightened, but even Saber was so shocked that she opened her mouth wide enough to fit a fist. Looking at his shocking wound, Saber felt a chill. Sasaki Kojiro didn't notice it and even she didn't understand how Dustless attacked. This also means that Dustless can hurt anyone without them noticing. Chapter 1770. How did he do it? It's impossible. I didn't even react at all. Could it be a ghost? What's more, this guy isn't even Servant. He's just a master who participated in the Holy Grail War. How can he be so strong? Sasaki Kojiro was so shocked that his jaw almost dislocated. He was frightened and puzzled at the same time. If a master was so powerful that he could kill Servant at will, then what was the use of them? Saber was silent and didn't say a word. She could understand Sasaki Kojiro's pain. When he was killed just now, even she didn't see how he did it. Do you still have the strength to stand up? Looking down at Sasaki Kojiro, who fell to the ground, Dustless commented, "Your strength is good. In my impression, the strength of a great swordsman is the outstanding type. If you want to find an excuse, I don't need others to do it for me." Sasaki Kojiro's face was gloomy, and his eyes glowed with a firm light. He inserted his tachi into the ground and his body full of holes stood up again. What an ignorant fool. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head and the purple Rinnegan in his left eye blinked again. The shadows that stopped beside Sasaki Kojiro launched a fatal attack again. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The ruthless attack came again and the same scene happened again. As many as 4 or 5 shadows began to beat up Sasaki Kojiro again. His body was extremely miserable and there were 20 more wounds on his body. No one can defend against this technique. Tomb of Samsara, border prison, is the natural enemy of all creatures. Dustless muttered, took Saber's soft little hand, and stepped over Sasaki Kojiro's gradually dissipating body. Only those with Rinnegan or Rikudo Senjutsu could detect the existence of the shadow. Therefore Sasaki Kojiro was just blinded and so was Saber. She couldn't find out who attacked Sasaki Kojiro. That's right. Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at Sasaki Kojiro, whose body had disappeared and only his head was left. He said, "You are very strong, but unfortunately you are in my way." Inside the quiet temple, fallen leaves drifted in the wind and a cool breeze blew. The environment of Ludong Temple, which was surrounded by mountains, was excellent. Bathing in the fragrance of nature, one's heart and mind were sublimated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Unfortunately, this rare suppression was disrupted by someone else. "Both of you, it's really rude of you to intrude into someone else's home and disturb them while they're drinking tea." A clear voice sounded from under the cherry blossom tree. Dustless and Saber glanced at each other and looked in the direction of the voice. "Castor, I'm sorry to disturb your interest, but I don't know anything about tea. In my eyes there are only enemies and friends. Which one do you belong to?" Walking side by side with Saber under the gorgeous cherry blossom tree, Dustless looked at Castor, who was admiring himself, and at the same time he stared at the 2 extra tea bowls and drank it without hesitation. "You're not polite at all." Castor looked up at Dustless and was about to ask how it tasted, but the latter's words suddenly made him furious. "It's disgusting. This taste is comparable to a biological weapon." Dustless coughed as if he was going to spit out the tea in his stomach. Huh. Saber couldn't help but chuckle. Even though she didn't try the taste, the fragrance of the tea filled the air and didn't disperse. Although she didn't know the specific taste, it wasn't as exaggerated as Wuxian said. Saber was sure that Dustless deliberately made Castor angry. "Well, it's a pity that I didn't poison you to death." Castor's face was cold, his great interest was all disturbed by Dustless. "Well, if I'm going to die, it's not good for you." Dustless smiled and immediately sat opposite Castor and said coldly, "Although all the conditions of the Holy Grail have been met, there is one thing I still need your help with, Castor. My master has been killed. You can still see that I continue to exist. Everything is because of the strong magic of Ludong Temple. It's only a matter of time before I disappear. What do you think I can help you with?" Glancing at Dustless, Castor said coldly, "Also, you seem to have made a mistake. We Servant are opposite to each other. Why should I help you? Help an enemy?" Of course, Castor refused. Only a person with a broken brain would do that. "You are a magician, right?" Dustless picked up the tea bowl and took a sip. He secretly praised Castor in his heart. Although he said that it was a biological weapon, Castor's tea-making skill was good. "The resurrection of the Holy Grail needs some unique magic circle. If you help me complete it, I can share the fruits of the Holy Grail with you." Dustless set his own conditions. "You?" Hearing that, Castor was stunned. Then he asked excitedly, "You are willing to give me the Holy Grail?" "Give it to you? Are you kidding me? This is something I worked hard for." Dustless rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, Help me get the Holy Grail, I can help you resurrect. Chapter 1771. Help me resurrect. Castor's throat choked a few times, his eyes were shining and his breathing was slightly messy. Hey, seeing this, Dustless revealed a confident smile and continued to bluff. The Holy Grail has many uses. It can not only fulfill one's wish. You've seen Gilgamesh last time, right? Gilgamesh? Hearing this strange name, Castor shook his head. There was no such name in his memory. It's the guy I saw last time. Saber interrupted and reminded him, your master Kugi Soichiro was killed by that guy. Turned out to be him. Castor heard that and said to Dustless in surprise, did that guy also participate in the last Holy Grail war? That's impossible, I heard that the winner was you. Why did that guy get a new body? Did you give him the Holy Grail? That's not it, I'm not that great, especially that guy. Dustless shook his head, giving the Holy Grail to Gilgamesh? Are you kidding me, I'm not gay. In the final battle, I didn't control my strength and broke the Holy Grail. Having said that, Dustless's tone paused slightly and he sighed. It caused all the evil of the world contained in the Holy Grail to flow out, and Gilgamesh also bathed in the evil of the world. Under normal circumstances, anything that bathes in the evil of the world, whether it's a person or something else, will be devoured, but that guy is the only hero king in the world. He was not devoured, on the contrary, he got a new life. The Holy Grail has such a function? Castor was stunned when he heard that, and then he licked his lips hungrily. Sure enough, you're tempted. Dustless smiled slightly, all of this was expected. If you can continue to live, no one wants to die. Human nature is greedy, and it's human instinct to ask for unlimited things, not to mention death. But, Castor suddenly frowned and he asked, the evil of the world, you said, seems to be very dangerous. My strength is not as good as the hero king. What if I get devoured? This is your own business. I'm not your babysitter, I'm not your relative. Do you want me to help you eliminate the evil of the world? Dustless shrugged his shoulders with a tone of wanting to help but unable to do so. Humph. Sure enough, Castor snorted coldly and said with dissatisfaction, what if I die? In this way, how can I take revenge on that guy? My plan last time was also related to him. It's none of my business. Wuxian turned his head and decisively distanced himself from the relationship. If you die, it only shows that you are useless. This world is originally so cruel. Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. No matter how times change, this will not change. Hearing that, Castor was silent, but he didn't refute. How can he refute? Because this was the truth. No matter which part of the sky one was in, the law of the jungle would always remain unchanged. If that's the case, Castor took a few deep breaths and his eyes were filled with determination. He looked at Dustless with indescribable firmness. It's useless for you to look at me with such a pitiful look, there's no benefit for me to do it, be my master. Without giving Dustless a chance to speak, Castor suddenly rushed over and looked at Dustless with his beautiful eyes. At the same time, he blew hot air into Dustless's ear, and a simple but elegant body fragrance inevitably passed into Dustless's nostrils. This guy. What do you want to do? When Saber saw such a scene, she was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. If it weren't for the existence of Dustless, she wouldn't mind teaching Castor a lesson. Saber was so angry with Castor's action that she almost said Castor's name word by word. Castor, be clear about this. This is not the place for you to show your charm. Saber's face was ugly as she reprimanded loudly. It was rare for her to show her fierce side. Teaching a weak person a lesson, although it's against the rules of being a knight, you'd better not challenge my tolerance. Castor's magical power was now gradually exhausted, and he might disappear at any time. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was powerless. Are you crazy? Castor. Dustless looked at Saber in surprise and frowned. I'm already Saber's master, how can I be your master? How do you know if you don't try? Don't forget Yen Feng Chili has two servants, one is Lancer and the other is Archer. Castor casually explained, I'll only trust you if I sign a contract with you. This. Dustless hesitated for a while and finally nodded. I can try, but you must immediately help me complete the magic circle to summon the Holy Grail. No problem. Castor decisively agreed without the slightest hesitation. But, then Dustless frowned and embarrassedly said, To be honest, I have a special way to sign a contract with Saber and I'm not a magician, so it may be difficult to sign a contract with you. It's very simple, we'll sign the contract the way you and Saber signed the contract. Castor said with a slightly embarrassed tone, and his face was slightly red. Are you sure? Saber and I are doing it for the first time. Chapter 1772. First time way. Hearing that, Castor's face was even redder and he nodded stiffly. In fact, he also guessed it. Dustless, we are here to resurrect the Holy Grail, not to create a good opportunity for you to talk to her. Saber was very upset, like an angry lion. She stared at Castor with hostility. Oh, it's so sour, is it my family's vinegar jar? Castor teased with a smile. This guy. Dustless was speechless when he heard Castor's words. It was meaningless, the vinegar jar that Castor was referring to was Saber. Castor looked at Saber and said, the Holy Grail needs other rituals, not to mention other tedious mistakes. Do you know how to prepare the magic circle? Saber was speechless and could only stare. In the end, she sat at the side angrily and glared at Dustless fiercely as if to say, just wait and see. Really? Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had to helplessly comfort Saber and whispered, life is full of helplessness, sometimes you can only compromise, Saber. Compromise. Hearing that, Saber looked at Dustless and questioned loudly, although you have some resistance on the surface, I have been with you for a long time, I know you want it. Ahem. Dustless suddenly coughed twice awkwardly. He no longer paid attention to Saber. He looked at Castor and asked, in short, what's your plan? The final decision lies with you. I will never force you. I can only promise you. After pondering for a long time, Castor finally chose to compromise. At the same time, he looked at Dustless speechlessly. This guy said that he would not force him, but there was only one way. What was the difference between this and forcing? That's the best. Then Saber and I will stay here for the night. Dustless nodded, meaning that he would do it with Castor tonight. At night the sky was getting colder and the cold wind was blowing. In the antique room the lights were everywhere and there was a sense of antiquity everywhere. Because they were living in the temple at the moment, it was not as prosperous as a big city, there were only interesting antique buildings. Although it was quite uncomfortable in the dark, it was undeniable that it was quite artistic. Through the darkness, Dustless and Castor hugged each other and slept in the warm quilt. During that time, naturally, many things that were not suitable for children happened. It was not a simple 10 minutes or a few hours, it was a whole night. In addition to signing the contract, Wuxia and Castor also replenished their mana. There was no other way, the mana in Castor's body had been exhausted. Even if they signed the contract, the mana storage was pitiful. If they didn't give him some mana, it would disappear sooner or later. And Wuxia was not a magician, so he could only replenish his mana. Of course, replenishing mana was also the fastest and most effective way to gain mana. Is this guy's body so fierce? In the early morning of the next day, Saber stood in front of Wuxia and Castor's room. She was secretly surprised by Wuqian's fighting power. He was so shameless that it was really embarrassing. Damn Dustless, damn Castor. Saber scolded. Last night she was like a spectator guarding Dustless and Castor's room. She watched the whole night and now she still had dark circles under her eyes. Creak. After a few minutes Wuxia walked out of the room lazily. He looked haggard and his steps were frivolous. It was obvious that his body had been hollowed out. Hey, don't be tired to death or else Archer will take advantage of you. S's extremely unhappy voice suddenly passed through. Dustless turned his head and looked at Saber, whose eyes were red. Ayaya, what a jealous little girl. Castor's lazy voice sounded. Unlike Dustless, Castor was refreshed, and there was a touch of intoxicating charm between his eyebrows. This kind of thing is really a man's loss. Dustless looked up and sighed and immediately went to Saber and comforted her. We will be on the same side in the future. With Sarvant, our chances of winning will be greater. It's not a big deal for me to be wronged. You're still wronged. Saber stared at Dustless in shock, looking at his cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt that Dustless was the most shameless creature in the world, including all the creatures in the sea, land, and air. But this guy really used magic to control Kugi Soichiro. She stared at Castor, who had a little bit of enjoyment on his face. Last night, Castor didn't give his first time to Gumu Soichiro as if he was helping her. In the end, it was Wuxia who took advantage of it. By the way, when will the Holy Grail come? I've brought everything I need to prepare. The so-called thing was actually Ilya, but this Ilya was not the Ilya, she was the android that Dustless ordered Saber to snatch from the Ahrensburg family. Although they looked exactly the same, there was not the slightest connection. Chapter 1773. There are still some steps needed for ordinary people. It will take at least a few days. Castor looked at the blue sky and said proudly, "That's only for ordinary people. As for me, I can solve it in a few hours." "A few days? Do you really need that long?" Dustless asked blankly. He still remembered the last time Yen Feng spent only a few minutes to solve the problem of the Holy Grail. "Do you doubt me?" Castor asked with dissatisfaction. "Don't doubt my ability. Everything needs to be prepared. Everything has a cause and a result. The process in the middle can't be omitted." "That's true." On second thought, Wuxian was relieved. Anyway, he didn't lack those few hours of effort. "You know what to do." Castor looked at Dustless with a satisfied smile on his face, and then under the gaze of Dustless he walked away gracefully. "Why are you smiling so happily?" Saber also caught up with him and said, "It seems that Dustless and you had a very intimate thing yesterday." "Don't call me Castor, I have a name, Medea." Looking at Saber's depressed face, Castor smiled even more happily. "You can call me Artoria." Although Saber was quite jealous of Castor's brilliant smile and wanted to beat him up, but out of the etiquette of a knight, she still gave her name in a friendly manner. "Artoria, do you want to know why I'm so happy?" Castor smiled and said, "That guy Wuxian cares about me very much. He seems to be henpecked. He doesn't have any doubts about my plan. He basically listens to everything I say." Last night, Castor and Dustless discussed a lot of trivial matters, and the latter unexpectedly agreed. Castor was surprised. Dustless was unexpectedly easy to talk to. "Just because of this? Don't you know there is a saying that a good man doesn't fight with a woman?" Saber's resentment was swept away. She rolled her eyes and said, "And you're wrong too. Wuxian isn't henpecked. It's just that you don't know him well enough." "Do you know about it?" Castor glanced at Saber and asked suspiciously. "Of course." Saber raised her head confidently and replied calmly, "I've spent a lot more time with Dustless than you. I know him like the back of my hand." "Tell me about it." Castor's interest was piqued and he stopped walking. His eyes were twinkling as if he was looking forward to it. "Dustless agreed to your conditions not because he's afraid of you. Being henpecked is even more ridiculous. In the end, it's just that that guy thinks it's his responsibility as a man." In fact, this was what Saber admired the most about Dustless. It was understandable that he was cruel and merciless to his enemies, but when it came to his own people he was sincere and caring. "You and Dustless are husband and wife, but you can't even fulfill your wife's wish. Are you still a man? That's why that guy agreed to all your conditions. That's what happened to Alice Phil." Saber said, and Castor couldn't help but nod. Sometimes, a man could tolerate his wife's nonsense, not because of the so-called henpecked, but because of the basic responsibility of a husband. If they really fought, Dustless could defeat 100 Castor. Being henpecked was completely nonsense. Achoo! In the other direction, Dustless inexplicably sneezed. He was lying on the couch leisurely and he opened his slightly tired eyes. "Who's talking about me so early in the morning?" Dustless touched his nose and thought strangely, then he closed his eyes again. Whoosh! The leaves were fluttering, the atmosphere was quiet and peaceful, but it was filled with a different kind of killing intent. Suddenly, Dustless's closed eyes opened again without warning. His eyes were no longer as indifferent as before, they were full of raging coldness. "No wonder I sneezed so early in the morning. It turns out that you're talking about me. This is just right. Anyway, Castor needs some time to prepare. During this period I'll use you to kill time." Standing up from the couch, Dustless stared at the man coldly, and a layer of ice formed under his feet. "You're also looking for me, Hero King. This is the last battle." This person's entire body was shining, radiating an intense light as bright as the sun. He stood there with his arms crossed in front of him, giving off a dignified aura without being angry. His eyes were mighty and domineering, as if they could see through people's inner thoughts, making people not dare to look at him directly. "Gilgamesh, as the oldest king, your strength is beyond doubt. The title of Hero King is the king of all heroic spirits. In terms of strength, you're definitely the strongest servant." Dustless is full of praises for Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh deserves the honor of being the strongest heroic spirit. I'm very grateful to get your praise. Gilgamesh stared at the calm Dustless full of complaints. However, I'm really not happy. I don't understand why I'm not as good as you. I shouldn't lose to anyone. Don't show such a complaining expression. No matter what, this is the last battle. No matter what the final result is, I will leave this world. Wuxian sighed. Gilgamesh always had the attitude of, God is the boss, I am the second boss. Perhaps Wuxian was sent by God to punish him. As for the reason, it was that this guy was too arrogant and high profile. Maybe the reason why you lost to me is because you're the unparalleled hero king and I'm just an ordinary person. Don't the final boss usually lose to a nobody like me? Chapter 1774. Don't get carried away, you rascal. Not long after, Gilgamesh exploded in anger. His temper wasn't good to begin with, and there was no such thing as patience in his dictionary. After several blows from Dustless, Gilgamesh's patience had been worn down. He wanted to try enduring, but he was infuriated by Dustless's contemptuous tone. In his anger, the Hero King did not hold back. The void exploded like raindrops falling to the ground. The bright sunlight was swallowed by the gorgeous and noble golden light as the void was drowned in a golden ocean. This move again. Kid, is this all you know? Don't you know how to be creative? You're hopeless. Sighing in boredom, Dustless was looking forward to it, but when he saw the light that filled the sky, he immediately lost interest. His intense interest was like a splash of cold water, disappearing without a trace. Before we begin, I have a question for you. Where's your master Yanfeng Chili? Although Gilgamesh threatened to kill Yanfeng Chili at that time, Dustless still had a suspicious attitude towards this. First of all, Yanfeng Chili's command spell had not been used up. Wanting to kill him was tantamount to a fool's talk. I have no authority to tell you that. Moving his gaze away from Dustless's face, Gilgamesh no longer looked at the clear black eyes. Being stared at by the radiant eyes, he felt that the secret he had hidden in his heart was exposed right under Dustless's nose. Become a hornet's nest, bastard. With a wave of his hand, the sharp weapons that were entrenched in the void shot out like meteors from the sky. Naturally, there was only one target: Dustless. The horde of divine weapons shot over, riddling Dustless with holes. He was covered in wounds and there wasn't a single spot on his body that was intact. But the strange thing was, even though he suffered a fatal blow, Dustless still stood firm. The places that were pierced only surged with a golden luster, and in a short while they recovered to their original state. Damned fellow, it's this kind of evil cheating ability again. Seeing this, the smile on Gilgamesh's face abruptly disappeared and he shouted, "Come out." Buzz. Gilgamesh's words contained a powerful force. The originally weak ripples in the void gradually expanded, and an ancient aircraft covered in gold flew out. Gilgamesh leaped up and jumped up with ease. This temple is an important place where the Holy Grail is about to be born. You don't want it to be destroyed, right? I'll fight you somewhere else. As soon as he finished speaking, Gilgamesh controlled the golden aircraft to cut through the void and fly straight into the distant horizon. Idiot, although I don't know what you're planning, but do you think I don't know this kind of laughable plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain? With a smirk, Wuxian formed a seal with his hand. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A shadow clone that was exactly the same as Dustless suddenly appeared and chased after Gilgamesh's location. Hero King, a shadow clone is enough to deal with you. Looking up at the disappearing light in the distance, Dustless turned and shot toward the temple. His observation hockey spread out, and after perceiving the location of Saber and Castor, he lazily walked toward them. At the same time, in another direction, Saber and Castor were together. Although the two were like fire and water, their cooperation at the moment was unexpectedly smooth, and the project that would have taken a few hours was greatly shortened. Inside the mysterious unknown magic circle, there were various messy red lines that were crisscrossed with each other. It seemed that there was no rule, but it was permeated with indescribable energy fluctuations. The magic circle that looked ordinary became extraordinary and mysterious because of the existence of this energy. Gulp. In the center of the magic circle there was a doll with a straight face. Her skin was as delicate as jade, and her silver hair was scattered on the ground. This person's appearance was exactly the same as Ilya's. It's really a ghost, Dustless. That guy will take the initiative to hand over this girl? That guy's head won't be filled with water. Whether this holy grail summoning ritual fails or succeeds, she will disappear. Castor said to himself. He also knew the girl lying in the magic circle, Ilya. You're mistaken, Castor. Saber looked at the unconscious Ilya and explained seriously. Although this girl is exactly the same as Ilya, they have nothing to do with each other. This Ilya in front of us is actually a backup puppet of the Einstein's Balin family. The real Ilya is still alive and well. So that's how it is. How could that guy call out his own people as a prop unless he killed him? Castor heard her words, and then decisively recited an obscure spell. The body of the doll Ilya also glowed, and then under Saber's expectant gaze, it turned into a holy grail inlaid with pearls and gems. Did it work? With an indescribable joy on her face, Saber excitedly asked loudly. It's commendable, you two are heroic spirits, but you can complete the summoning of the Holy Grail. Not bad. In order to express my gratitude, you two will die. Saber and Castor. The cold sound wave suddenly came. Castor and Saber turned their heads and looked. Yanfeng Chili walked out of the corner. Chapter 1775. Is this guy an idiot? Listening to Yanfeng Chili's arrogant remarks, Saber and Castor's heart were very strange. A mere human being actually wanted to fight a servant. Wasn't this the typical behavior of looking for abuse? Yanfeng Chili, do you think you are dustless? Unfortunately, I'm really sorry. If everyone were to face all the servants on their own like he did, we servant would lose our jobs. Saber's words revealed a touch of sarcasm. Hearing this, Yanfeng Chili smiled carelessly. Then he said in a shocked tone, the world-renowned Night King, do you still remember my name? It's an honor. How can you still laugh? Castor's eyes were strange. A master can still remain so calm in the face of two servant. Do you think you are ignorant or courageous? No matter what, you must die here today. Saber held the Excalibur in her hand and her eyes were cold. Seeing this, Yanfeng Chili only laughed sinisterly and said in a hoarse voice, the two of you are mistaken. I should have said before that I am here to take the Holy Grail. I still need it to answer the questions of my life. You're dreaming. Castor and Saber unanimously refuted loudly. Especially Castor's reaction was the most excited. His delicate face even blushed, which was very cute. Of course, it was all because of anger. In order to be resurrected, Castor and Dustless signed a contract. She gave her first time to Dustless, so that the latter would become her new master. The price she paid was as heavy as a mountain. And now this inexplicable guy actually wanted to take away the Holy Grail. Such a practice obviously angered Castor, the tigress. Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish. She gently waved her hand. In the void, countless magic bullets fell from the sky. You two idiots underestimate me too much. Yanfeng Chili smiled gloomily like a demon in the abyss, shuddering. Then he picked up his right arm full of command seals, and suddenly shouted, Gilgamesh, come out quickly. Buzz buzz buzz. Next to Yanfeng Chili, a man in golden armor with red eyes and golden hair appeared. Light of a firefly. Gilgamesh snorted disdainfully as he raised his head to look at the falling magic. Shortly after, a large number of ripples appeared in the void behind his back, and countless noble artifacts slowly emerged from it. Disappear. Swish. Swish. Under Gilgamesh's command, the precious artifacts that he had been saving up for a long time all erupted and shot towards the horizon. Boom boom boom. The magic bullets in the sky were destroyed in an instant, and the situation was one-sided. The powerful magic bullets were destroyed and a large number of noble phantoms were shot at Castor. So strong. Castor's pupils suddenly shrank as he smelled the smell of death. Don't even think about it. Seeing that Gilgamesh was going to attack Castor, Saber flashed sideways and appeared in front of Castor like lightning. Then she raised her sword and swung it. Excalibur. The beautiful golden sword poured out and shattered the vast sky, and the debris of the weapons fell from the sky. Boom boom boom. The huge light was extremely powerful, and when it came in contact with the attack of the noble phantoms, it exploded and smashed hundreds of weapons in one fell swoop. On the surface she's a woman, but on the inside she's a ferocious lion. Gilgamesh murmured as he looked at Castor and Saber calmly. You two have no way out today. Without that guy to protect you, you're going to die. Gilgamesh, why are you here? Saber was alert. Dustless could suppress Gilgamesh at will, but she didn't have that ability. Idiot, this is called the strategy of luring the tiger away from the mountain. I ordered Gilgamesh to deliberately lead Dustless away, and finally I used the command spell to order him to appear. I took advantage of the short time when Dustless was not there to kill you too. Then I took the Holy Grail. Used the power of the Holy Grail to kill him. Yan Fengqi laughed proudly and his distorted cheeks were full of joy. At this point, Yan Fengqi didn't expect Gilgamesh to kill Dustless. He also realized that Dustless was powerful. However, Yan Fengqi didn't despair. Since Gilgamesh couldn't do it, he could count on the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail. Naive, you want to take advantage of the short time when Dustless is not there to kill me and Castor? I'm sorry to tell you that this kind of thing is very difficult to do. Saber's eyes were like torches. Although she didn't think that she was Gilgamesh's opponent, at least she could delay him for a while. Your confident look is really disgusting, Saber. I let you do whatever you want in the past because I was kind. I don't even need a minute to kill you. Gilgamesh's face was cold. The situation was special. He couldn't let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So Gilgamesh didn't pretend to be cool. He directly used the parting sword. In the past, Gilgamesh liked to die, so he rarely used his full strength, but now it was different. He must kill Saber and Castor in an instant, and then use the power of the Holy Grail to kill Dustless. That was his and Yan Fengqi's plan. Chapter 1776. Ha 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 ha. Without that annoying guy Dustless, do you think the two of you can defeat Gilgamesh? Just wait to be slaughtered. Yan Fengqi let out a hysterical laugh. Soon after, he walked toward the Holy Grail with the attitude of a victor. The fanaticism in the depths of his eyes could not be concealed. That's not something you can touch. Seeing that Yan Fengqi ignored their existence, Castor was angry. She had regarded the Holy Grail as her own thing. How could she let others touch it? Whoosh! Rows of magic bullets flew out again and stabbed toward Yan Fengqi's back. Haven't you figured out the situation yet? You have no chance of winning. Yan Fengqi turned his head and glanced at the attack. Then he said indifferently, Gilgamesh, do it. Whoosh! In the blue sky, several sharp blades cut through the sky, and the sound of breaking air quickly approached the magic bullets. Puchi! Puchi! The noble phantasm shot out from the gate of Babylon, crushed the magic bullets effortlessly. Yan Fengqi, who was safe and sound, continued to approach the Holy Grail. Finally, I will get you. Close to the Holy Grail, Yan Fengqi's heart was in his throat and his hands couldn't help but grab it. Even the mysterious liquid flowing out of the Holy Grail, the evil of the world, was ignored by him. Saber, before we start, I have something that has been puzzling me and I want to ask you. Gilgamesh held the parting sword in his hand and stared deeply at Saber. Then he said, I don't understand why I am not as good as that guy. Even you, as the king's possession, chose him in the end. In the end, Gilgamesh's tone was obviously twitching with anger. His appointed wife actually slept with Dustless in advance. Gilgamesh's head was about to explode. He could already see the green hat on his head. All of this was bestowed by Dustless. Gilgamesh was nailed on the mark of shame. This also became a haze in his heart that he couldn't get rid of. There is no need to answer this question at all. Saber just shook her head and asked, How do you think you are better than Dustless? How can I be better than Dustless? Do you still need to say that? Gilgamesh felt that he had too many advantages and there were countless aspects that surpassed Dustless, such as When Gilgamesh was about to speak freely, he was speechless. He blushed with shame as he realized that he was not as good as old Dustless in every aspect. For example, strength. The gap between them was self-evident. For example, wealth. Gilgamesh had no advantage in this aspect. With the existence of Babylon of the king, Gilgamesh was destined to be the richest person in the world. Unfortunately, old Dustless also had this ability. Next was identity and status. Gilgamesh had 2/3 of the godhood, but it seemed to be useless. He was still crushed by Dustless. Not to mention that it was only 2/3. Even if he was a complete god, he could only nurse a grudge in the end. Now you know what Dustless and you are aware of, right? Saber said softly as she stared at Gilgamesh, who was unwilling to give up. Let's end this, Hero King. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Hearing that, Gilgamesh's disobedient sword began to spin, and a destructive red energy ripple was released from the disobedient sword, like a tornado that was gradually expanding. The Holy Grail is mine. Oh, it hurts. A heart-wrenching scream was heard in the void. Saber and the Hero King, who were about to start the battle, were stunned. and the relic in their hands was withdrawn at the same time. B*****, B*****, B*****. Which B***** did this come out? Yan Fengqili was wailing on the ground in pain, his cheeks were sweating from the pain, and even his body was trembling uncontrollably. The ground was covered in blood. Chili you, Gilgamesh widened his eyes and looked over. Yan Fengqili's arms had mysteriously disappeared, and his hands were chopped off by someone. D*****. Yan Fengqili wailed in pain. The Holy Grail was right in front of him, and a flash of light suddenly struck, mercilessly crushing Yan Fengqili's dreams and chopping off his hands. Yan Fengqili was in so much pain that he grimaced. Damn it, I've already finished my drink and you guys are only starting to fight. I can't bear to watch this anymore. A young man with an empty drink bottle walked out from the dark alley that Yan Fengqili had just walked out from. He said to the two with a slightly regretful expression, I gave you the best stage, but the contestants' dance was unbearable to watch. Dustless. Yan Fengqili and Gilgamesh exclaimed at the same time. All this while, the annoying figure that they did not want to see the most had appeared, and their faces turned pale. You should have been sent away by me, right? How could you be back so soon? Gilgamesh said with a hateful expression. In order to delay Dustless for a while, Yan Fengqili and he had even set up a large number of traps within the enchantment. You two self-righteous idiots. The one who followed Gilgamesh was actually just a shadow doppelganger. My original body didn't leave Ludong Temple at all. As for what I've been doing, I'm sure you've already figured it out. I've been performing in front of two complacent idiots all the time. Hearing this, Yan Fengqili and Gilgamesh's faces turned red, and they glared at Dustless furiously. Chapter 1777. Originally, the two of them were complacent because they had fooled Dustless once. Who would have thought that reality would be so cruel? They gave Gilgamesh, Yan Feng and Qili a big slap in the face, making them dizzy. In other words, you knew in advance that it was our scheme? Gilgamesh's old face was as black as a pot. Just when he was happy about the success of his plan, he was suddenly exposed by his nemesis. This feeling of indignation was especially infuriating. We've known each other for 10 years. There's no harm in making you happy once. It's also my farewell. After all, I'm leaving soon. Dustless sighed. 10 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Unknowingly, it was time to say goodbye. You still want to leave? You must die. Yan Fengqili and Gilgamesh shouted at the same time. Their hatred for Dustless was unforgettable. The great humiliation that Dustless gave them 10 years ago was unforgettable. It was time to put an end to it. This was especially true for Gilgamesh. His future wife had been snatched away from him and she had even slept with him. As the oldest king of the human race, he had been unknowingly made a cuckold out of someone else. Gilgamesh's heart was bleeding. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. The current Gilgamesh did not expect to kill Dustless. He would be satisfied if the two of them disappeared together. He would not allow Dustless and Saber to live happily. Absolutely not. His pride could not accept it. Gilgamesh. Yan Fengqili looked at Gilgamesh and said in a low voice, You hold him back for a while. I'll control the Holy Grail and use its power to destroy this guy. Idiot, you're about to die. Dustless shook his head and looked at Yan Fengqili helplessly. That slash was an attack with Amaterasu. It was a slash from the life of Earth. It will burn your body. Burn me? Do you think I'm burning? How dare you lie through your teeth? Yan Fengqili sneered. Just as he was about to turn around and approach the Holy Grail, an intense burning pain suddenly came from his hands. Then black flames inexplicably ignited on his hands. Quickly disappear. Dustless's lips curled up slightly. As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Feng and Qili were completely engulfed by the flames. They didn't even have time to scream before they evaporated and disappeared without a trace. Master is dead. How much longer can you last? Who can provide you with magic power to fight me? Dustless mocked Gilgamesh unscrupulously, completely ignoring the gloomy Gilgamesh. With the smile of a winner on his face, he said, The one who shows up in the end is the real winner of the war. All the people before him are just pawns that serve as a foil for him. For example, you, Gilgamesh. No matter what, I'll drag you down with me. Gilgamesh had been dealt a blow by Dustless, who wasn't obedient when they saw him. Now Dustless actually mocked him as a pawn and a foil. What a bastard. For example, the former master, Toshiomi and Osaka, didn't even dare to breathe loudly when he saw Gilgamesh. Even when facing Gilgamesh, he would often perform the etiquette of a king. Although Yanfeng Qili wasn't as exaggerated as him, he didn't dare to mock Gilgamesh like Dustless did. Accept your punishment. In his anger, Gilgamesh used all his strength to perform obedient parting sword. Even though Master had disappeared, the magic power stored in his body was enough to fight Dustless once. Alish. Destructive energy ripples came head-on, carrying with it Gilgamesh's anger. The surrounding space shook, creating endless ripples. It only stopped when it reached the boundary dozens of kilometers away. It wasn't hard to see Gilgamesh's displeasure and disgust. Dustless was really an eyesore. How scary. Staring at the powerful slash coming at him, Dustless pursed his lips and smiled. He also took out an ancient tachi with a red blade. It was hard to tell if it was strong or weak. Buzz buzz buzz. The slender blade emitted a clear hum. The crisp hum was accompanied by a blazing temperature. How can this king's attack be blocked by the toy in your hand? Too clumsy, Dustless, Gilgamesh said with a contemptuous smile, but he was muttering in his heart. What kind of weapon is that? I don't even have it in my king's treasure. Why does this damn guy always have such mysterious things? Gilgamesh's heart was filled with envy. In the past it was the heaven-defying complete form Kinsisanu. Now he took out a mysterious tachi with an extraordinary texture. Even though he said it was just trash not worth mentioning. But there was no harm in thinking about it. With Dustless's identity, would he be bored enough to collect a trash tachi? Experience its temperature. Compared to your good sword, the power of this tachi is not inferior. It is even more powerful than your good sword, Bankai, remnant flame tachi. Immediately afterward, a very strange scene was staged. The green grass on the ground and hundreds of flowers were blooming, including the old trees with luxuriant foliage, instantly withered and turned into lifeless dead trees. What is this situation? All living creatures are withering and dying in large numbers. Gilgamesh, Saber and Castor were stunned. Not only the flowers and trees, but even the chirping migratory birds all fell to the ground and inexplicably disappeared. Chapter 1778. Woo woo woo. The migratory birds made a burst of whining, the flowers and trees were singing, the green grass withered in an instant, and even the clear pond not far away, the green pond water was inexplicably evaporated. All kinds of fish in the water were turned into rotten bones. What's going on? What the hell did this guy do? Castor was shocked, his eyes widened, and he stared at Wu Qin in amazement. He saw that Wu Chen's body was burning with golden flames, and the surrounding void was burning as if he was in a flaming hell. I have to get rid of this guy as soon as possible. Zanka Tachi hurts both the enemy and the user. It might even destroy this planet. Wu Chen muttered to himself. At the same time he stared at the incoming attack and said indifferently, Zanka Tachi West, waning sun prison clothes. Boom. The golden flames around Dustless's body burned more fiercely, and the golden light with higher density quietly rushed out from the pores of Dustless's body and gradually covered his whole body, and the whole person was covered with a golden aura. The temperature of this materialized golden blazing coat was as high as 15 million degrees Celsius. Buzz, just as Gilgamesh's highly anticipated attack was about to get close to Dustless, a strange scene occurred. The sharp light that was strong enough to flatten a mountain was strangely peeled off layer by layer. The originally thick and big chop was thought-provoking as it peeled off and shrunk. When it landed on Wu Chen's body, the powerful chop seemed to have disappeared. What the hell is going on? Where is Gilgamesh's attack? Castor was shocked. The sweat that just dripped from her beautiful forehead disappeared without a trace in an instant. She didn't notice this scene, but Saber beside her saw it clearly. No wonder. The confusion in Saber's eyes disappeared and she said with relief, no wonder there is such an exaggerated scene. Although we can't see it, it seems that the water in the world is evaporating. The water in the world is evaporating. Castor's head was dizzy when he heard that. How big was this planet? She didn't know much about it, but there were hundreds or even thousands of them. They were as big as Dongmu City or even bigger. Can't be that exaggerated, right? It's the size of a planet, not just a city. Castor took a deep breath and asked, what's the level of that weapon? World-defying relic? The strange sword in Gilgamesh's hand seems to be a world-defying relic, but its power is completely different. Damn it, why doesn't my king's treasure have such a powerful weapon? Sensing the sharpness of the remnant fire tachi in Dustless's hand, Gilgamesh roared angrily. All the treasures in the world belonged to the hero king, but sadly he did not have this divine weapon that could annihilate the world with power that exceeded he. Gilgamesh, for the future of this planet, you might as well commit suicide, Dustless suddenly said. That way you won't be implicated. It's none of my business. Gilgamesh rolled his eyes and said coldly, what does the life and death of other people have to do with me? The power of Xianxia no Tachi is extraordinary. From the moment I used the Bankai, the water on this planet began to evaporate and disappear at an accelerated rate. Without water, all creatures will die. Do you want to drag this planet down with you just because of yourself? So, you might as well commit suicide. What a joke, I can't accept this ridiculous theory. Without thinking, Gilgamesh directly refused. What does the life and death of others have to do with him? What's more, in Gilgamesh's view, all the creatures in the world were bastards. It didn't matter how many of them died. Is that so? In the end I still have to kill you. The falling remnant fire tachi was waved again. Dustless's eyes were locked on Gilgamesh, and the body of remnant fire tachi was permeated with violent golden flames. Whoosh! Suddenly, Dustless raised his hand and waved, and the front end of remnant fire tachi stood out. Remnant fire tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. A terrifying halo streaked across the sky and rushed toward Gilgamesh. The moment this unparalleled slash appeared, it felt as if the sky had collapsed. The vast void began to slowly collapse and a bottomless crack appeared as if someone had torn it apart. Wherever the golden flame slash went, everything collapsed. Bastard, don't look down on me. Although Gilgamesh was disgusted by the power of this move, he decisively raised the Gwaili sword in his hand. The sword that had stopped began to rotate again, and a spiral of destructive light erupted. It's the same trick again and again. It's really boring. Sighing in disappointment, Dustless had already seen Gilgamesh's disintegrated appearance. Whoosh! The Gwaili sword shot out a large scale of destructive light, and the spiral of energy fluctuations continued to expand. It was like a roaring tornado showing off its power. However, it was useless. Poochie! The golden flame slash shattered the energy tornado with an unstoppable force, and it tore Gilgamesh's attack apart. It couldn't even cancel it out. The moment the two came into contact, Gilgamesh's all-out attack was dismembered by the terrifying sharpness and the fatal heat. Not only that, after destroying the spiral of energy tornado, the apocalyptic light swept toward Gilgamesh, and under his shocked gaze, it pierced through his body. Chapter 1779. Gilgamesh was dumbfounded as he looked at the huge hole in his body in disbelief. He didn't even feel any pain, he only felt that a part of his body was missing for some reason. He looked down and saw that his entire abdomen had been cut off, erasing all contaminated matter. This is the essence of Xianxia no Tachi. It's a sword of fire that can destroy the world. Every time it's swung, it's accompanied by an explosive flame that can crush everything. Looking at Gilgamesh's shocked eyes, Dustless calmly explained, "Now you can die in peace." Die in peace? You want me to die in such a humiliating way and you still want me to rest in peace? Even though half of his abdomen had been cut off, Gilgamesh's eyes were still red. He stared at Dustless's handsome face ferociously, wishing that he could hold his hand and die together. Is that so? You still want to fight back? Calmly looking at Gilgamesh, Dustless didn't know why this guy was so obsessed with him. Even when he was on the verge of death, he still hated him. Gilgamesh, in the east of this planet there's a saying that goes, when a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad. Why are you even worse than a bird? Dustless was even more confused as he asked, besides, how are you going to continue fighting like this? I know I lost, but... A rare look of cunning flashed across Gilgamesh's face. Immediately after, he used the last of his strength and swung disobedient sword again. Do you still intend to continue resisting? Dustless frowned and looked up. He saw that Gilgamesh was still determined. Even though his body was slowly dissipating, he was still forcefully using disobedient sword. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful energy fluctuations erupted and the sky shook once again. Buzz buzz buzz. The energy ripples spread out once again, spreading throughout the entire Willow Cave temple. Wind and sand were blown up from the ground. Although the power was shocking, it was nothing compared to the scale of a few dozen kilometers just now. It was completely different from before. Don't even think about getting what I can't get. Gilgamesh's eyes were filled with determination, and his tone carried the meaning of mutual destruction. You mean Saber? Wu Chen's body flashed, his body swept in front of Saber and Castor. Holding Xianxia no Tachi in his hand, he said to Gilgamesh, I'll stand here if you can do it, try it. You? Gilgamesh's face darkened. He looked at Dustless with an unfriendly gaze. However, all of a sudden Gilgamesh's lips curled up into a sinister smile. You've misunderstood me. That's my true intention. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As his voice fell, Gilgamesh's obedient leaving sword, which had been brewing for a long time, blasted out mercilessly. This guy is insidious enough. Did he deliberately use Saber to divert my attention? Dustless was a little surprised. He looked up and saw that the target of Gilgamesh's sword was not Saber nor Castor but the Holy Grail. This damn bastard, so this is what he meant by mutual destruction. Does he want to drag us down with him? Castor's heart was in his throat when he saw that, and he hurriedly urged Dustless, think of a way or the Holy Grail will be destroyed. If the Holy Grail is gone, Sarvant will disappear with it. Isn't this just right? Dustless didn't panic. Instead, he calmly took back Xianxia no Tachi and said, after the collapse of the Holy Grail, that's the evil of the world, that flows out will be the foundation of your body. But my wish. Saber showed a bitter smile. She didn't expect the final result to be like this. The last time the Holy Grail was broken by Dustless, but this time it fell on Gilgamesh's head. Saber, you participated in the Holy Grail War twice and the final result was the same. Maybe this is destined, and now you know the truth about the Holy Grail. Do you really think this kind of thing can fulfill your wish? Dustless asked calmly. The Holy Grail carried the evil of the world. It was the combination of human negative emotions. How could this kind of thing fulfill a groundless wish? At the beginning of the Holy Grail War, Dustless knew that it was a scam, but it was undeniable that this disgusting thing actually had some use. Boom. At the same time, the Holy Grail exploded and all the evil of the world that it carried splashed out. Dustless, Saber and Castor were not spared. They were pulled into the endless black sea by the evil black mud. Gulp. A large number of evil of the world flowed out with the explosion of the Holy Grail, and in an instant, it occupied the entire Ludong temple and spread out at a very fast speed, occupying the surrounding ground. Boom. About a few minutes later, a dazzling light rushed out and boundless high-density energy spread out. The huge wave of energy was like a spring in the deep sea, and all the evil of the world was crazily recovered. Gulp. After a while, all the evil of the world was forcibly recovered by some kind of mysterious force, but the carrier was not the Holy Grail, but the young man who stood there peacefully, Dustless. You want to control my mind with this kind of little trick? It's at least 100 times stronger than the current one. Opening his cold eyes, Dustless secretly sneered. His body was like an abyss, and the evil of the world was forcibly recovered. He absorbed as much as he could to become stronger. Chapter 1780. Along with the passage of time, the black mud that occupied the entire ground, the evil of the world, was all collected by Dustless without leaving a single drop. His body was like a bottomless black hole, absorbing all of it into his body. You still want to control me? How childish are you? Dustless muttered to himself. After being absorbed, the evil of this world was not reconciled. In his mind, it violently attacked Dustless's mind, trying to control his consciousness and even control it. Phantoms of crying and howling appeared in Dustless's mind for a long time. All kinds of bloody scenes caused by human greed were played in Dustless's mind. Perhaps Dustless didn't notice that his eyes have turned red, and his eyes were bloodshot like a bloody spider web. It's ridiculous. After a while, the blood-red eyeballs regained their clarity. His face was stiff. He had destroyed about 5 worlds, so it would be too funny if he was controlled by something like the evil of the world. It's as smooth as I thought. Dustless bowed his head slightly, looking down at Saber and Castor, who fainted on the ground next to him. Both of them were naked at the moment, and their smooth and delicate bodies were all exposed to Dustless's sight. After pondering for a long time, Dustless revealed his bloody eyes, which were Sharingan. Finally, I got a new body after such a big circle. It's finally completed. Dustless's deep eyes stared at the two women. After confirming that both of them got a new body, Dustless sat down with relief. The evil of this world was absorbed by Dustless, and the pressure on the two women was reduced a lot. Being able to resist the impact of the evil of this world was also Dustless's expectation. It's almost time to retreat. Touching his chest, Dustless nodded with satisfaction. After resurrecting Saber and Castor and also swallowing the evil of this world, his strength that hadn't increased for thousands of years had a little breakthrough, which was a good harvest. In the system world, Dustless appeared as usual. At this moment the sky was dark and Dustless was accompanied by Rin Enbin, Saber and the others. Women were always curious about unfamiliar environments, especially when they suddenly came to an unfamiliar world. The buildings were all antique, so they didn't need Dustless to call them. Everyone walked around on their own. By the way, I have something to tell you. 3,000 willow strands danced in the wind, and a beautiful figure quietly appeared beside him. The consciousness of the system Ling. I still have a few things that I need you to collect from the worlds that we'll be traveling to. Ling Er's peerless celestial voice rang out. The 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon and the Yellowstone Heavenly Scripture. Why hasn't this happened before? Dustless's face was filled with astonishment. He stared at that cold little face in surprise and said, "So you're saying that you want me to snatch things? This is a job for the poor. What benefits can I get? Are you so snobbish? Will it kill you to be a little helpful?" Ling Er pouted. Her angry look was quite cute. This is normal, right? If you ask someone to do something for you and don't give them any benefits, who would agree to help you? Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. All right, after the matter is done, I'll agree to all your conditions. After hesitating for a while, Ling Er finally compromised. She then turned into an afterimage and left. Boom boom boom. At the same time, the void exploded and an unreachable dark tunnel appeared. It was filled with a soul-stirring power. Even though Dustless had experienced it several times, he still couldn't figure out the mystery of its structure. The 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon and the Yellowstone Heavenly Scripture. They seemed to be unusual things. Why does that little girl Ling Er want these things? Dustless's face was filled with confusion, especially when he saw Ling Er swallowing her anger. This little girl had a proud personality. She wouldn't ask for help even if she was beaten to death. This time she was willing to lower her head and ask for help from Dustless. It was really puzzling. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. Shaking his head, Dustless decisively forgot the confusion in his mind. He stared at the dark tunnel and decisively went in. The lake was filled with thick fog and the visibility was less than 10 meters. It was as complicated as a maze. If one didn't live here all year round, they would definitely get lost. Sister Rong, I seem to have heard a splash just now. Did a brother of the Mo family fall into the water? On the quiet lake, a young girl with a fresh and refined appearance stared at the cold woman behind her and asked doubtfully. The girl's clothes were ordinary. She couldn't be said to be rich or noble, but between her speech and behavior, there was an almost natural air of nobility. The girl's name was Gao Yu, and the cold woman behind her was the owner of the Mirror Lake Medical Manor, Duanmu Rong, who was known as the Mirror Lake Medical Fairy. The two of them had just returned from picking herbs when they heard unusual movements. I heard it too. Duanmu Rong nodded and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. But before this I didn't receive any news of the disciples of the Mo family. Strange. As one of the commanders of the Mo family, Duanmu Rong was also an important figure in the Mo family. If someone came to see a doctor, she would generally inform in advance. Be careful, you. It may be an assassin from the Qin kingdom. Duanmu Rong warned seriously. Among the 100 schools of thought, the Mo family and the Confucian family were the most powerful. When Ying Zheng swept the world, the Mo family stood on the opposite side of him and was regarded as a thorn in his side. Recently, there was news that Ying Zheng planned to deal with the Confucian family. Duanmu Rong instinctively felt that it was an assassin from the Qin kingdom. Sister Rong, look, this person's clothes are very strange. He doesn't seem to be from the 6 states. Chapter 1781. Faint ripples appeared on the lakeside as the boat gradually approached the floating figure. His attire is indeed strange and he's ridiculously young. Assassins have been trained hard all year round, so their skin and physique are relatively tanned and strong. This guy is so handsome he shouldn't be an assassin or a killer. She circled around Dustless's body. Out of safety and caution, Duanmu Rong calmly lifted his clothes and stared at his firm and fair chest. He was slightly stunned. Is this guy a woman or a man? Why is he so fair? Duanmu Rong was rather speechless. His delicate skin was even better than hers, as smooth as silk. This person had a handsome appearance and was undeniably handsome. It was a stretch to say that he was an assassin who had been trained hard. Saving people is the duty of a doctor. This guy doesn't seem to be in my 3 don't save list. At the same time, he doesn't look like an assassin. Bring him back, you heir. I understand, Sister Rong. You heir nodded obediently and carried Dustless onto the boat with Duanmu Rong. Damn heir. Every time I transmigrate, the space tunnel always has problems. 3 days later, Dustless, who had regained consciousness, cursed Ling heir. He raised his gaze slightly and stared at the ancient room as well as the names, Azure Dragon's 7 Mansions, and Yellowstone Heavenly Book, as well as Sister Rong, and you heir. He was sure that he had arrived in the world of the legend of Qin. Creak. As if sensing the movement in the room, the door was gently pushed open. 2 beautiful figures invaded Dustless's pupils. You've actually woken up? It's so fast that it's beyond my imagination. I thought you would be bedridden for at least a month. Duanmu Rong looked at Dustless in astonishment. The shock between her brows could not be concealed. Dustless recovered so quickly that it was far beyond her expectations. May I ask where my clothes are? Also, this seems to be a woman's clothes. Dustless moved a little and found that his clothes were no different from Duanmu Rong's. In fact, they were exactly the same. He immediately looked at the 2 of them speechlessly and let out a miserable cry like a pig being slaughtered. F***ck, he had unknowingly changed into a woman's clothes. Poochie. Seeing this, Yuer pursed her lips and smiled. She said softly, at that time your clothes were all wet. If you don't change you will get sick. There are no men's clothes here. My clothes are not suitable for you, so I can only change into Sister Rong's. I see. Thank you, both of you. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was hard to find out who helped him change his clothes. Only Duanmu Rong and Yuer were women, so it went without saying who did it. Dustless would be safe and sound even if he was soaked in water for 10 days and 10 nights because of the 10-tailed beast, not to mention such a trivial matter as wetting his clothes. Even so, Dustless still cupped his fists and thanked him in a friendly manner. My name is Dustless. If you need any help in the future, you don't have to be polite. There's no need to thank me. It's a doctor's duty to help the injured. Hearing this, Duanmu Rong nodded calmly. Her eyes remained cold. Rest for a few days. When you recover, leave this place. As soon as she finished speaking, Duanmu Rong pulled Yuer and left. Sure enough, she's as cold as in the original work. Dustless didn't mind seeing this scene. As for leaving this place, he didn't have such thoughts for the time being. The system consciousness had told Dustless to seize the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon. Although he didn't know where it was hidden, there was something related to the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon in the mechanical city of the Mo family, the Phantasmal Sound Treasure Box. Although Duanmu Rong's attitude is a little cold, she has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Looking down at the fragrant food on the table, Dustless revealed a faint smile. Then he wolfed down the food. He hadn't eaten for 3 days and his stomach was already growling. Sister Rong, although his origin is unknown, he doesn't look like a bad person. Through the gap of the door, Yuer asked innocently, why don't we let Dustless stay for a few more days to recuperate? Yuer, you're too naive. Duanmu Rong's face was full of caution. She glanced at Dustless and analyzed. This guy's physical fitness is obviously extraordinary. It's not a coincidence that he can recover his body like this. Even if he's not an assassin of the Qin Kingdom, he's a martial artist. Now our Mo family is wanted by the Qin King Yingjing all over the world. If we have something to do with this mysterious and extraordinary person, we might expose our tracks. This is a big taboo. I know, Sister Rong. Yuer lowered her head and finally nodded obediently. This woman is really wary. Wuxia, who was eating silently, smiled but didn't say anything. He laughed dryly and didn't say much. It was reasonable to guard against strangers. Especially now that the Mo family was walking on thin ice, It was normal to be more cautious. However, the situation seems a little strange. When I fell from the space tunnel, I seemed to see other people appear. Putting down the chopsticks in his hand, Dustless was puzzled. When he fell from the sky, he found many people wandering around the lake like headless flies. Could it be an assassin of the Qin kingdom? Dustless pondered. No matter who it was, he was sure that they were not from the Mo family. Jinghu Medical Manor was the territory of the Mo family. People who came here were naturally familiar with the place. It was impossible for them to wander around like flies. In addition, there was only the Qin kingdom as an enemy, and Countercurrent Sand was also an enemy. And the Yinyang school. The 7 constellations of the Azure Dragon seem to be related to them. Seems that this force is an enemy. Dustless's eyes were cold. If the Yinyang school didn't know what was good for them, he didn't mind letting them know what the real Tao was. The Tao of Ants. Chapter 1782. People who had conflicts of interest and grudges that could not be resolved were all hostile forces. Dustless had always killed these people whenever he saw them. Oh right, I see that your body is almost fully recovered. Remember to chop the firewood in the courtyard after you finish eating. Duanmu Rong's cold voice came from outside the room. Chop firewood? No problem, leave this to me. Dustless nodded. He knew that this was the Mo family's rule. You reap what you sow. There was nothing inappropriate about it. Sister Rong, he has just regained consciousness. Is it really okay to force him to work like this? Blinking her eyes, the kind-hearted Yu heir could not bear to do this. No, this is just a simple test. If he is innocent, I will naturally not make things difficult for him. If there is something wrong with this guy, I will become a poison doctor. Duanmu Rong said coldly, her beautiful eyes emitting a cold light. However, she did not know that her words were heard clearly by Dustless. What an eccentric woman. Dustless picked up his handkerchief and wiped the grease from the corner of his mouth. He walked out of the room and pointed at the firewood under the shade of the tree. Leave this kind of work to me. Don't be fooled by my skinny body, I am definitely stronger than you. Yu heir's eyes curved into crescents as she laughed. Thank you, Brother Dustless. Sister Rong and I happen to have time to pick herbs. Pick herbs? Dustless frowned as he looked at the calm lake in the distance. Although it is not appropriate for me to say this, I still hope that the two of you will not go on a long journey. What is the reason? Glancing at Dustless, Duanmu Rong asked calmly. Dustless was speechless. He wanted to say that there might be enemies nearby, but he did not have any evidence. Especially since he was the suspect of Duanmu Rong. Looking at the weather, it seems like it's going to rain soon. Why don't we wait for a few days? Anyway, those herbs won't run away. Dustless pointed at the dark sky and changed his mind. Thank you for your kindness, but you and I can still handle this kind of small storm. You can chop the firewood in peace. Duanmu Rong and Yu casually responded, then picked up the basket they had prepared in advance and left. Really, you don't understand human feelings at all. Dustless sighed as he looked at the piles of dry firewood. Since he had nothing to do, he simply sat down and began to chop the firewood seriously. This was the best way to pass the time. Sister Rong, we seem to have gone the wrong way. Yu heir stared at the cold Duanmu Rong with her big eyes in confusion. She said with a perplexed expression, we're going in the wrong direction. The waterway in front leads to the Mo clan. If we're going to pick herbs, we should go to the uninhabited island in the west. I'm going to the Mo clan's mechanical city. Duanmu Rong shook her head and said seriously, a mysterious person suddenly appeared on the island. No matter if he's a friend or a foe, we have to tell the Mo clan brothers about this. Moreover, it's a special time now. The giant has invited all the heroes from the 100 schools of thought to gather at the mechanical city to discuss the plan to deal with the Qin dynasty. I feel uneasy leaving this guy on the island. Duanmu Rong told the truth. This kind of thing could actually be done with the mechanical bird. However, out of caution, Duanmu Rong gave up on this idea after some consideration. It would be safer for her and Yu to go to the mechanical city together. Miss Duanmu, your intelligence is admirable. However, I've been here for a long time. It's hard for me to let my prey leave just like that. At this moment, a lazy and slightly demonic voice came from the dense forest. Who's there? Duanmu Rong was shocked. In a flash, she threw out dozens of cold lights. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sharp lights came straight at her. The cold needles were slender and straight. They contained enough force to pierce through a person's body. Don't show off your insignificant skills. It will only make me feel that you're even more powerless. The lazy voice came again. This time it was much clearer than before. Duanmu Rong was sure that it was a female. The seductive tone was as scary as a maze. If one was not careful, they would be pulled into a nightmare. A figure in a red robe walked out of the dense forest slowly. Her fair and pretty face was revealed. Her eyes were filled with lust. This person had a seductive and fiery temperament. Her coquettish appearance made people's mouths dry. She walked lightly and gracefully. A pair of watery peach blossom eyes flowed with a seductive charm. Shoo, hoo, hoo, hoo. She waved her hand lightly. The soft and sharp sword at her waist clashed with the cold lights that came from the void. Immediately bright sparks flew. Plang, 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 plang. Duanmu Rong was obviously at a disadvantage. The hidden weapons she threw out were all blocked. Luxia, Qilian. After calling out the name with difficulty, Duanmu Rong's face changed. She said with a pale face, "How did you find this place? Is it because of that guy called Dustless?" Dustless? After thinking about this unfamiliar name, Qilian shook her slender fingers and said, "I don't know this name. Moreover, he's not from Luxia. Miss Duanmu, do you think that Luxia will ask for help from an outsider? Moreover, he's a nobody. I've never heard of him before. You're underestimating the power of Luxia." At the same time, a large number of poisonous snakes appeared on the ground. Some were thick and some were small. They spat out their scarlet tongues. Obviously, they were attracted by some kind of power. They surrounded Yu Er and Duanmu Rong. Chapter 1783. Hiss 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 hiss. The hissing of the venomous snake was endless, lingering in their ears. The purplish-red evil mouth made them shudder, and they could not help but feel their hair stand on end. This is bad. Duanmu Rong's beautiful forehead was covered in cold sweat. She grabbed Yu Er's arm tightly and said in a low voice, I'll take the opportunity to open up a path for you to survive. Leave Qilian of Quicksand to me." When she said this, Duanmu Rong was also filled with great courage and the calmness of seeing through life and death. Her cold eyes even seemed to have disregarded life and death. "Sister Rong, let's go together." Stubbornly shook her head, and her little hand that was holding Duanmu Rong's hand tightened. "This warm scene makes my eyes turn red. I can't help but cry." Twisting her slender waist, Qilian touched her reddened eyes, and there were even sparkling tears in her eyes. It seemed that she was truly touched. Taking a step forward, Yu mustered up her courage and asked, You're willing to let me and Sister Rong go?" "Of course. Actually, Sister is not a bad person." Qilian's tone was gentle and light and sounded very familiar. It gave people the feeling that they were close family friends. Yu's eyes suddenly became empty, and she was a little absent-minded for a moment. What an innocent little girl. Her delicate face maintained a gentle appearance, but Qilian's heart became lively. She stared straight at Yu's empty eyes and her gentle eyes instantly changed. Waves of evil ripples appeared in her eyes, and red light flowed in her scarlet eyes. It was as terrifying as a venomous snake. Not good. This is the fire charm technique. Noticing the abnormality, Duanmu Rong's expression quickly changed. She quickly moved to the side and appeared in front of Yu, preventing them from looking at each other. She reminded loudly, Don't, woo woo woo." The words that were about to come out of her mouth were suddenly taken back. Duanmu Rong's breathing became incomparably difficult, and her white face suddenly turned dark red. When was it? Duanmu Rong opened her eyes wide in disbelief. She discovered that a scarlet-red snake was glaring at her ferociously. Her neck had already been coiled around by the snake at some point in time. "Little Sister Duanmu, you were too careless. You focused all your attention on this little girl and didn't care about your own safety. It wasn't a coincidence that you were captured by me. It was inevitable." Qilian strode forward gracefully. The depths of her jade-like legs were occasionally exposed to the air as she walked. When he was about 20 to 30 feet away from Duanmu Rong, Qilian stopped and said with a smile, "When you care about others, at least look at your back." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a gust of chilly wind suddenly blew from behind, causing people to shiver uncontrollably. "Is it an illusion?" Qilian furrowed her brows slightly. She turned her head to look behind her as if she was possessed by some supernatural force. Her gaze spread out rapidly. When she discovered that there was no one around, Qilian once again retracted her gaze. She stared at Duanmu Rong, who was in pain. "Farewell. Miss, when you preach to others, may I ask, have you carefully looked at your back?" Just when Qilian was about to kill Duanmu Rong, a voice suddenly appeared like a ghost. Qilian was caught off guard and her heart skipped a beat. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Immediately, a cold glint appeared in her eyes. Without even thinking, the chained snake's soft sword at her waist swept out again. "Shinra Tensei." Bang. An indifferent voice rang out and a brutal repulsive force burst forth. The flexible sword, which was like a poisonous snake, was easily deflected away. Even Crimson Viper himself was affected quite a bit and he was sent flying 10 meters back in an instant. "Miss Duanmu, are you all right?" Dustless's body flashed and turned into a breeze, quietly appearing behind Duanmu Rong. Duanmu Rong, who almost fell, happened to be supported by Dustless. I'm fine. Save you air first." Duanmu Rong replied with a trembling voice. Her white cheeks were covered in sweat and the space between her eyebrows was purple. Bean-sized beads of sweat continuously dripped down and even her clothes were wet. This symptom did not seem to be caused by a snake strangling her. Instead, it seemed to be another illness. "Your air is fine for now. But you..." Squinting his eyes, Dustless suddenly discovered 2 small scarlet holes on Duanmu Rong's neck. Blood flowed out continuously and even the skin around it was purple. "She is indeed poisoned. These damned snakes." Raging killing intent surged in his eyes. A chill broke out and the various poisonous snakes around Dustless instantly turned into sparkling ice sculptures. What kind of ability is this? There is such a move. Can inner strength be used like this? Qilian, who was barely able to stand, happened to see this unbelievable scene. Immediately she sized up Dustless in shock. Using one's own inner strength to freeze the surrounding scenery. This was the first time Qilian had seen such an unheard of move. This doesn't seem right. This guy's inner strength is different from ordinary people. Her eyes narrowed into a slit and the boiling killing intent disappeared. She stared at Dustless with anticipation. Unexpectedly, an unknown force suddenly enveloped Qilian. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Her body suddenly flew out of her control and almost instantly she flew towards Dustless. The hand that was raised was like a giant hand from the heavens. It was difficult to escape from Dustless's control. In an instant, Qilian's neck was grabbed by Dustless. "Miss Qilian of Quicksand, I am not a modest gentleman. Although I also like to have tender feelings for the fair sex, but I advise you to obediently hand over the antidote for the snake poison. Otherwise, I might ruthlessly destroy the flower." Cough cough cough. Is this guy even human? How can he be so strong? Crimson Viper twisted his body, and the internal energy hidden in his body also burst out. All of it blasted onto Dustless's body. He tried to use brute force to shake off the cold and stern Dustless, but this guy was unmoved. He was completely fine. Chapter 1784. Cough cough cough. With Dustless choking her, Crimson Viper coughed violently. The energy that kept flowing out of her body blasted onto Dustless. However, this guy was like a steel bar. His eyes were unchanging. This guy. Crimson Viper's pretty face changed drastically. Her view of the world was refreshed because of Dustless. Although when one's inner strength reached an unbelievable level, it could also turn into an indestructible armor. But this guy shouldn't have no reaction at all. It's as if I didn't hit him. Crimson Viper complained incessantly. She really couldn't accept this result. "Miss Crimson Viper, I'll repeat this one last time. Hand over your antidote." Dustless's face was cold. His body was emitting an icy aura. If Duanmu Rong was injured, for example, her heart was destroyed, this was a small problem for Wuxian. He only needed to use the yin-yang escape, to let her break out of the cocoon and be reborn. However, things like poison were completely different. The poison had completely penetrated into her meridians and spread to her limbs and bones. Wuxian was also helpless. Dustless really didn't know how to expel the poison out of her body. Of course, if he just let Duanmu Rong die and used the outer Dao reincarnation to revive her, it would be too troublesome. Moreover, Crimson Viper was right in front of him. Cough cough cough. "Are you going to strangle me to death first? Let go of me." With Dustless choking her, Crimson Viper had difficulty breathing. She even had symptoms of dizziness. She could die from suffocation at any time. With a grunt, Dustless finally let go of Crimson Viper. She couldn't run away anyway. You should be glad. If I catch you next time, it'll be your neck that's broken. Dustless stared coldly at Crimson Viper and said coldly, hand over the antidote before you wear out my patience. Otherwise I'll search for the antidote myself. Search for it yourself. Hearing this, Crimson Viper pursed her lips and smiled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with lust. She asked with a smile, are you planning to molest me? You're so strong and so handsome, I don't mind having a wonderful night with you. Crimson Viper blinked his crystalline pupils. Visible ripples spread out from his eye sockets. Tiny, imperceptible energy fluctuations invaded Dustless's mind. You don't mind? I really mind. After a long while, Dustless's mocking voice suddenly sounded. His cheeks were filled with undisguised contempt as he said loudly, with your level, you want to play illusion in front of me? As expected, newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. Go back and cultivate. You can barely affect me for 100 years. Why aren't you affected by the fire charm technique? Qilian's face suddenly changed greatly. That smiling appearance just now was gone forever. Looking at Wu Chen's clear eyes, Qilian understood that this guy was completely fine. Every move has its limit. You want to use illusion to control me, especially such a vulgar illusion to control me. So funny. Dustless explained indifferently. However, he was quite concerned about Qilian in his heart. This guy is acting coquettishly on the surface. In fact, he's doing it on purpose. As long as the enemy shows a flaw, he will launch an attack like just now. How about it, Miss Qilian? Do you want to stop fighting or do you want to die here? Light flickered in his hand and a golden sword appeared. Dustless looked down at Qilian and asked, I'll repeat myself. I'm not a gentleman. Although I like to be gentle to women, I also like to destroy them. You win. Qilian was helpless. She could see the cold light in Dustless's eyes. He wasn't joking. She took out an emerald glass bottle and threw it to Dustless. You know your place. Dustless took the bottle and snorted. He then removed the stopper and quickly put 2 pills into his stomach. Are you crazy? Aren't you afraid that I'll give you poison? Qilian was stunned. She stared at Dustless with her mouth wide open. Everyone only had one life. If he was poisoned to death, everything would be over. She was the famous poison lady in the Jianghu. Everyone avoided Red Viper, not to mention eating Red Viper's pills. It might be highly toxic. Of course, I'm afraid it's poison. So I'll try one first. Dustless felt the effect of the pill and said to himself, it doesn't seem to be poison. It doesn't have that strong toxicity. Does this guy think he's immune to all poisons? Qilian was speechless when she heard Dustless's answer. She knew that Duanmu Rong was immune to all poisons. That was why he used the green-scaled flame snake to sneak attack her. This kind of snake was more powerful than ordinary snakes. Its toxicity was more than 100 times stronger. That was why it barely had an effect on Duanmu Rong. However, Dustless was so bold. He didn't have the immunity to all poisons, but he still dared to act recklessly. This really shocked Qilian. He was playing with his life. If you can poison me to death, I'll admit that you're capable. I have nothing to say. After glancing at Qilian, Dustless found that the pill was normal. He opened Duanmu Rong's mouth and stuffed a black pill into it. No matter what, you've saved me once. From now on, we don't owe each other anything. After the pill entered her lungs, the effect was immediate. The purple color between Duanmu Rong's eyebrows disappeared without a trace. Her complexion gradually returned to normal. Duanmu Rong opened her tightly closed eyes and recovered some vitality. She looked at Wu Chen, who was staring at her without blinking, and nodded slightly. Immediately, a wisp of embarrassment flashed across her delicate face, and the faint blush disappeared in an instant. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by someone who was almost in a daze. If it weren't for you, this demoness would have succeeded. Seeing Dustless staring at her, Duanmu Rong couldn't stand his burning gaze and took the initiative to change the topic.